It's been a bit of a throwback sprinter's first week so far on the Tour, except on the line, of course, where the throwing has all been forward.
Cavendish! He's going to do it! It's between Alaphilippe and Sagan at this point. The world champion, no! He wins!
I'm very surprised I won because I was thinking in the front it's still two guys.
Now Cavendish goes. Can he get past Greipel? It's going to be close. Cavendish and Greipel. Cavendish and Greipel. You cannot split them. But this is one for the powerful sprinters. It's Coquard and it's Kittel and it's close once again.
Dead much.
Today the terrain changes and so will the faces at the front of the field. As the road rises, we should get a better look than we've had so far at the riders whose race numbers end in 1. All of which is a roundabout way of saying that the Tour has reached the mountains without just starting the show with a map. Stage 5 has 6 categorised climbs spread over 206 kilometres of the Massif Central between Limoges and Le Lieuron. The fourth, the Pas de Pérol, is the highest of them at 1,589 metres. And hard on the heels of that come the Col de Pertus and the Col de Fond de Serre. That's the last official climb, but once the riders are over it, the road rises again to the line. Hello, the last time the Tour went over 1,500 metres in altitude as early as stage 5 was 2009, when it started down in the south and headed pretty much straight into the Pyrenees. So as well as providing us with a pair of fantastically close sprint finishes, the combined 461 kilometres of the last 2 stages have served to get the race from the northwest tip of France down into the volcanic landscape of the Massif Central. As massifs go, it is pretty substantial, covering 15% of the country, and although it doesn't rank particularly high on the Tour's scale of suffering, it should at least give us an early indication of who is and isn't going well among the overall contenders. The defending champion certainly seems to be, and Daniel Friebe spoke to him down at the start in Limoges.
Chris Froome, 4 stages down, 5th on general classification, 18 seconds behind the leader. You must be very relieved and pleased to have got through these first few days unscathed.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy to be where I am at the moment. I think if you'd said to me that I'd be in the top 5 after 4 predominantly sprint stages, I'll have definitely taken that. So no, happy with that position, and looking forward to going into the climbs today. I think we've got a great team around us, and a team that's a lot more orientated in a climbing group of guys. So hopefully once we get up into the hills, the race will settle down a little bit, and we'll be able to do what we've trained for.
First big climbs today, as you said. We're going over the Puy-Mary. You went over that climb in 2008. Very different, Chris Froome, very different time. It was a brutal day. Luis Leon Sanchez was the winner that day. What memories?
You've caught me off guard there. I can't actually remember which stage that was. It all seems to go into a bit of a blur after a few years, but no, I mean, on paper it is a tough day today. It's undulating. Those climbs are not easy. They're not big mountain passes, but they are going to hurt. They're going to take that edge off the legs, and I imagine today's stage winner is going to be definitely from that climbing group, someone maybe a little bit more punchy, someone like Alejandro Valverde or Alaphilippe, even Dan Martin, one of those kind of guys.
Did you go and look at the climbs in training, Chris?
No, we haven't been up here and done recon of these climbs.
You've tipped Alejandro Valverde to win today's stage, but if he takes the yellow jersey, that's not going to be great news for one of your big rivals, is it, Nairo Quintana?
Well, I mean, they're obviously teammates, and it could actually work in their favour, having a two-prong approach like that with Valverde and Quintana. I think they're both looking great shape, and they've got a strong team around them, so it could be one of those things that actually works out in their favour. But let's see how today goes.
Cheers, Chris.
Right, let's check the standings coming into stage 5. Peter Sagan has a lead of 12 seconds over Julian Alaphilippe and 14 on Alejandro Valverde. Chris Froome, as you heard Daniel say, is currently lying 5th in that large group of riders at 18 seconds. Nairo Quintana, Fabio Aru, Dan Martin, TJ Van Garderen, Romain Bardet, Adam Yates and Joaquin Rodriguez are all in it. Vincenzo Nibali and Thibaut Pinot are 11 seconds further back. Geraint Thomas is at 42 seconds, Alberto Contador at 1 minute and 6, and Richie Porte at 2:03, 1 minute 45 behind the Froome group. So, welcome to the stage that Chris Froome didn't think was worth wrecking and that goes over climbs he doesn't remember riding. Never let it be said that ITV4 doesn't know how to hype a sporting event. But Chris, all right, it's not a massive test, but it could function as a useful indicator for the bigger mountain test to come today.
Absolutely, bit of an hors d'oeuvre for sure, but they cannot let their guard down. The first few days of wind, they knew that was going to be a problem. Well, this is no different. The terrain today, they go from big road to small road. The descent, some of them are really tricky, particularly in that last 35k. So everybody's got a job to do. The GC riders, those going for a stage. And we're going to see a lot of the team tactics come to the fore today. We're going to get a real idea of who's really here for what.
Yeah, I mean, and what do you expect from Froome and Sky's tactics then?
Well, Froome, I think, is going to be same old. He's going to follow the stage contenders. I don't think he's going to be going for any kind of a win on this terrain. He'll want to stay close. Quintana will be following Froome, as he has been all of this first week. But after that, you've got the second-tier contenders for the podium, as it were, and they've all got something to do. And I think that's where we're going to get a glimpse. Are they going to go all in? So Contador, for example, has his team. Are they going to invest in him as a GC rider, or are they going to start to get as much insurance as they can and trying to go for stage wins? And that'll all come out today, I think, as people start to either chase the breakaways or try and get in them.
Yeah, so if Tinkoff expend a lot of energy today trying to protect Peter Sagan's yellow jersey, that's probably an indication that they don't think Contador can get the yellow jersey in Paris.
Yeah, he's had a tough start. He came into it with good form, fifth in the Dauphiné, but not his shining self. So I don't think anybody, heart of heart, thinks he can win this race. He's got an outside shot. After all the hard luck he's had in the first few days, I wouldn't go all in with him either. He's a fighter for sure. He could animate the race, but to win it, I think now it's probably beyond it.
Now, Julian Alaphilippe and Alejandro Valverde are both within striking distance of taking the yellow jersey. There actually is a breakout today with a hefty lead, so perhaps that's a moot point. But Chris Froome keeps mentioning Alejandro Valverde as a possible man to take the yellow jersey. It's not in his makeup usually to engage in psychological warfare, but I wonder if he's slightly needling Nairo Quintana there.
Well, Valverde is a winner. He always has been, and even in the past when he's supposed to be working for Quintana, he's always looking for an opportunity to win a stage, so fair enough. But already those breakaways which have got a hefty lead, even they have given us an indication. The first break, of course, we got Grivko from Astana, so that's already saying we're looking for stage victories. And there's a counter as well with Tinkoff rider Micah in there, so they're looking for stage wins. So we're already starting to see the story unfold. All
right, just one last name to throw at you before we get on with live racing. Romain Bardet, these are his home roads. He knows this country very well.
Yeah, and I thought that today would be a great one for him to go for a stage. He's in the back group at the moment. He knows these roads. He's already said the descents are just as important as the climbs, and going over the top in the right position is important. But having said that, now that stage victory may well have been taken away from him. We'll see if he's riding for GC, because after his performance in the Dauphiné, I think he's got a shot at the podium too.
All right, all very interesting, and lots of men up the road in a couple of different groups. Chris has hinted at a couple of people who are in there, but let's get over to Ned and David for the full picture.
Lots of men up the road, a couple of men locked into the cabin here, as ever. David, this has been a little voyage of reawakening memories for you, hasn't it? Back at the Tour de Corrèze, which we passed through on the way. That was your first ever yellow jersey as a junior. And you've just suddenly remembered racing in the Tour de France in 2011 on these roads as well.
Yeah, I know this region very well. I mean, it's a fantastic bike riding country, but it's incredibly hard. And from when I did it in 1996 as a first-year amateur to 2011, when we had the yellow jersey, we were defending for Tor Hushovd. And it was that day when Vinokurov crashed, and it was actually us leading who were going a bit too fast, and the descent, which we're going to do in a bit. So I know, and it's going to be a hard day, and I think the peloton know that. That's why they're kind of being a bit conservative.
All right, let's have a look at what is happening out on the road now. And as Gary and Chris have already indicated, a breakaway is up the road, and it's got a really hefty lead, which is going out, it has to be said, all the time. And interestingly, quarter of an hour is the advantage for the riders up the road, with only 67.3 kilometres remaining. That said, there are 4 categorised climbs still to come. We'll get into some detail about where they are and what they look like. The next summit that they go over is the Col de Néron, and that comes with just 42.5 kilometres remaining. So there's plenty of climbing still to go. Let's mark your card about the men who are up the road. Well, after the first categorised climb of the day, which went through the Côte du Saint-Léonard de Noblat, which was a nod to the great Raymond Poulidor, his hometown, that mountain point was taken by Jasper Stuyven, just a Cat 4 climb. After that, 9 men got up the road, and for a while those 9 stuck together. They were Florian Vachon from Fortunéo Vital Concept, Romain Sicard, another French rider from Direct Energie, Bartosz Kozarski from Bora Argon 18, Serge Pauwels from the team of Steve Cummings, who you're looking at the back of the peloton, Dimension Data, Cyril Gauthier from AG2R La Mondiale, good climber, Rafa Majka, interestingly, from Tinkoff and the Polish national road race champion, and 3 others. Then those 3 that I haven't mentioned yet, and you're looking at now, attacked the other 6. So this is the head of the race now, and some big name riders feature. Thomas de Gendt is at the front of the pace line. 3rd, of course, on the Giro d'Italia a few years ago. Thomas de Gendt, very familiar rider in breakaways, and he's done an awful lot of work over the last few days trying to set things up for André Greipel in the bunch sprints as well. So de Gendt is 15 minutes down in the general classification. Andrei Grivko, the teammate of Fabio Aru and Vincenzo Nibali for Astana, he's only 4 minutes and 4 minutes and 20 seconds down in the general classification. And the last member of that trio up the road, Greg van Avermaet from BMC, is only 18 seconds down. So, David, to say he's a virtual race leader is almost an understatement. He's got 15 minutes on the road, and he only needs 18 seconds.
No, exactly. He's leading from Grivko. Grivko is actually 2nd on the road at the moment, and so it's a pretty strong move. We wondered a little bit what he was doing at first, and we can see Movistar have now taken the lead, which they've waited a bit long to do this. I mean, the only reason they'll be riding now is to perhaps pursue the stage today. But again, bringing back 15 minutes and 65 k's, we know it's going to be very hard. They've still got 3 hard climbs to go, and there's almost between those climbs, there's no flat. There's nearly no flat whatsoever now for the rest of the stage. You can see even here it's false flat, it's heavy roads. And I think they're going to have to bring back, they have to eat into it straight away. We know these guys are going to slow down a lot because they've been out there all day. It's been a long day. It's the first proper hot day of the Tour de France this year. But it's a lot. I think they need to put more than one rider up there, Movistar. Sky seems to be just riding more of a conservative placement race. They haven't recon this. We know the Movistar team have. They've been here and they've checked out this stage. They know what it's about. So you'd think they'd be a bit more proactive going chasing it, whereas they've left Sky simply to control it and race conservatively for most of the days, just being as you'd expect the Tour favourites team to do, just taking control and keeping everything in balance. But at the moment, everything's in Greg van Avermaet's court.
Yeah, and you begin to wonder what the point of this group on the road is as Rafa Majka moves to the front, taking over from Cyril Gauthier, because they are several minutes behind the trio up the road, and OK, they're a long way in front of the peloton, but those 6 are not getting across to the 3. The chasers, if you like, are not chasing particularly hard, so there's not much at stake really for those riders, except possibly by the end of the day improving their general classification standings. The mountains, such as they are on the road today, are all a mixture of Cat 3s and Cat 2s, which means that even with a Cat 2, there are only King of the Mountains points available for the first 4 riders. So there's actually only 1 King of the Mountains point available for the group of 6 chasers in that competition as well. So it seems, especially if you're Rafa Majka, it seems a little bit pointless, that move now.
Our first reaction when we saw his name in the break, we've been talking about the last few days. We wondered why he'd been dropping off the pace when he's one of the stronger riders in the Tinkoff team, and we thought perhaps he was going to play the best climber, go for that, chase that jersey. And if that's the case, well, he's dropped the ball completely today. He made into the move and then has let this move go, and it's now been a bit of a futility, a kind of game of futility for him today. So I don't really know. He's in that no man's land now. He may as well just sit and do the minimum this move and hope that he can help Alberto Contador or Peter Sagan when they come across. And this is actually playing well into Peter Sagan's hand because it means the race has gone a bit more steadier going into the climbs. But at the same time, that makes no difference because Greg van Avermaet has taken so much time. There's no challenging him for the jersey at the moment.
That's a really unusual way that this race has unfolded at the moment. Team Sky have done the majority of the pace setting, but I say pace setting, hasn't been particularly effective, and they've allowed that move to get 15 minutes up the road. Now Movistar, as you've already indicated, David, are a bit more interested. They've sent a rider up to the front. But it is a puzzling race situation, and for Greg van Avermaet, it's an absolutely fantastic position he finds himself in now. Yeah, would have been a speculative move, I would imagine, at the first offering, and when he got himself in that move, to see how it unfolded. But he wouldn't have, in his wildest dreams, I don't think, have imagined this.
No, he's really been forcing it. He's been a driving force in the last 30 Ks. They've been extending time, and they're only just stabilising this now at 15 minutes. A few Ks ago it was 13, before that it was 12, and And so Greg van Avermaet's really been extending that lead because he knows he has to. He has to get that gap as big as possible before they hit these final 3 climbs.
Well, the peloton just passes over the top of the Category 3 Côte du Puy-Saint-Marie. Don't be confused, there are 2 very similarly named climbs today. The Côte du Puy-Saint-Marie that they've all just been over now, and the next but one climb with 31 kilometres to go, the Pas de Pérols, otherwise known and much more famously known actually as the Puy-Marie. Thomas de Gendt is very much eyeing up the King of the Mountains jersey. Over the Côte du Puy-Saint-Marie, he scored his first mountains points on the Tour de France, taking 2, and at this point there are still 14 more King of the Mountains points available. And don't forget, Jasper Stuyven on the road now leads and wears the King of the Mountains competition, but he's only on 5 points. So if de Gendt continues to score heavily, as you would imagine he would do, the other 2 riders in the breakaway weren't really contesting those mountains points. It's almost certainty, I think, that Thomas de Gendt will be the King of the Mountain by the end of the day. So 3 quite evenly matched, strong riders in this breakaway. And Matt Rendell, you've been looking at their recent biographies and doing a bit of number crunching for us about this trio.
Yes, indeed. A good little trio, isn't it? All 3 have won Grand Tour stages. Van Avermaet, the only one of the 3 who has won 2 of them. One in the Vuelta and one at the Tour at Rodet last year, on a day when de Gendt was in the breakaway and was caught in the final kilometre and won the Combativity Award. The second time he's been the most aggressive rider in his Tour de France career. Of the 3 of them, Van Avermaet has the fast finish, de Gendt is the breakaway specialist, Grivko more of a worker for his team leaders. De Gendt famously won that Giro stage on the Stelvio in 2012, getting onto the lower stage of the final podium, but that was a while ago and he's never come close to repeating that performance. He mostly finishes his Grand Tours 60th or worse as Etixx Quick-Step move to the front. It's looking good, isn't it? Van Avermaet and Grivko's gone head-to-head in a couple of post-Tour de France Eneco Tours. Go, Ned.
Yeah, well, this is an intermediate sprint, isn't it? With 200 metres to go. That's the reason why Etixx Quick-Step have sent their big men to the front. And the big form of Marcel Kittel now, just picking up the minor placings here. Brian Coquard challenging him again. So once again, it's Kittel and Coquard crossing a sprint line together. This time, Coquard gets the better of the German. Cavendish in 3rd place in that sprint with the yellow jersey of Peter Sagan picking up 4th place. But there are 9 riders further up the road. Points for 15 riders there, so really just the minor placings being disputed in the green jersey competition. Matt, where were you?
Well, out there somewhere are Van Avermaet and de Grivko. They've gone head-to-head at a couple of post-Tour de France Eneco Tours. In 2014, Grivko was 4th, Van Avermaet was 5th. Last year, Van Avermaet was 2nd, Grivko 6th. In short, a well-balanced trio indeed. Better climbers behind them in the chasing group, notably Rafael Majka, but de Gendt, Van Avermaet and Grivko have ridden 29 Grand Tours between them, and if anyone knows how to bring a 3-man breakaway home, they do.
Thanks very much, Matt. Greg Van Avermaet might well be in the leader's jersey at the Tour de France at the end of the day. Won't be his only stage race success this season. He won Tirreno Adriatico this year, albeit without the big Queen Mountain stage, but it was a fantastic duel between him and Peter Sagan over that week of racing back in the spring in Italy. As we look down at Mauriac in the Auvergne, the landscape has changed in France, and the landscape is changing before your eyes on the Tour de France as well in terms of the race. We're going to take a short break. Welcome back. A slightly more business-like look at the front of the peloton with Team Sky stringing things out somewhat. As you can see, the pace has gone up a little bit, but the gap remains constant, hovering around 15 minutes to the 3 riders up the road, Thomas de Gendt, Greg Van Avermaet and André Grivko from Astana. Principally, it's Van Avermaet and the man from Lotto Soudal on the front who are doing most of the work. Grivko is sitting on, for the most part, doing his occasional turn. But the 2 men in the red kits, the 2 Belgian riders, are the motor in this trio for the time being. Greg Van Avermaet is riding himself into the yellow jersey on the Tour de France. Well, there's every possibility that he is anyway, just starting 18 seconds down in the general classification on the day. What a day out he's having. David Miller, there might be people watching at home who are thinking that is a huge advantage. If the race were to stop now, he'd have a quarter of an hour lead over the big GC favourites. Is he about to win the Tour de France on one single day? Now, why is that not the case?
Well, we've got what's going on now. We've got short-term GC and long-term GC. So Sky are riding in the front, defending the long-term GC. As far as they're concerned, they only want to wear the yellow jersey one day, and that's the final day in Paris. But there are other teams and other riders that any day in the yellow jersey would be massive for their career, for their team, for their sponsors, etc. And for Thomas de Gendt, this is an opportunity that's nearly, I mean, it's nearly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be in yellow. Now, he's a climber, so he's going to lose. He's not a climber, he's a classics rider. He's the sort of guy that excels in the cobbled, the Belgian early season classics, and this is the sort of race where the first day we come to the mountains, he's going to hemorrhage at least 15 minutes in the first big summit finish. And even now, if once the peloton starts picking up, sort of the 3 climbs coming up, that group will lose a lot of time. But so 15 minutes, the peloton, the long-term GC teams like Sky, like actually, I mean, he's got teammate TJ Van Garderen, Richie Porte, even Movistar with Nairo Quintana. Thomas de Gendt isn't a threat whatsoever for them, so they're fine with him taking 14, 15 minutes today. I mean, it's not so good for us watching the race for entertainment value, hoping to see a battle between the big GC guys, but they'll wait for the bigger long-term goals, which will be the mountains coming up this weekend, although we might still see fireworks later on today.
So assuming, I don't know if we can, but let's assume for a minute that this trio stays away and that they contest the stage victory amongst them, and effectively Greg Van Avermaet, even if he finishes third and is dropped on the final climb, will still be the yellow jersey at the end of the day. That doesn't mean that what we're seeing further back in the peloton, where all the big GC favourites are, if you like, the Paris favourites, there won't be a battle between them to take an opportunity might arise to hurt Richie Porte, TJ Van Garderen, Chris Froome might want to hurt Quintana if he sees a bit of weakness, etc, etc. That could be a battle still to unfold.
No, exactly, and it's a little bit checkmate at the moment, because I think many of those big the long-term, let's say we call them the long-term GC riders, they're quite happy with this checkmate at the moment, because it's one less day for them to fight it out between each other. And so Sky are perfectly happy for this situation. So what's happening now, you have the short-term chase for yellow, which is Greg Van Avermaet. You have somebody looking for the stage win, which at the moment looks like it would be from these 3. And then behind, you've got the long-term GC here who are battling out. And then there's this group in the middle who are kind of, they're basically in no man's land now. They're
having an existential crisis, aren't they? They're trying to figure out the meaning of existence.
I think they're just realising what a terrible mistake they made letting that group of 3 go, because it's true that you would hesitate if, when those riders went so far from the finish, you think, well, that's a bit of a silly move, what are they doing? You'd let them go, and then before you know it, the race is over, and they're now 3 minutes behind that group. But to be fair, they've basically stayed at the same pace, and it was Greg Van Avermaet that really lifted it up and dragged those 3 riders away.
Last time we got a time check, it was 2:45 from the 3 riders at the front of the race back to that group of 6. And last time we looked at the peloton, they had a 15-minute advantage, and actually quite quickly that's come down by 30 seconds.
I'm quite surprised, a little bit bewildered, to be honest with you, with Movistar. Either they chase this, they commit to the chase fully and put 3 riders on there with Sky and bring it down as quickly as possible. At the moment, just having 1 rider, and I think it's Aviti, who's a very strong rider. Aviti and Kirienka, I mean, they are incredibly strong riders, and Ian Stannard's been riding through as well, and Luke Rowe. So that's 4 riders, 3 of which are Sky. Now, it's interesting, Sky are putting so much work into this. No one else is really helping Movistar. Now, whether Sky have spoken to Movistar and said, look, we're playing the long game, let's not let this get out of control. Because Thomas de Gendt, I mean, he is 10 minutes back, but he has finished 3rd in the Giro, and there's always a fear that he's somebody that could pull that form out again. I mean, once you've been on the podium in the Grand Tour, that means you have that pedigree, that ability, and so they're not going to let it go too far. Greg Van Avermaet isn't such a big concern, neither is Grivko, as they don't have 3-week pedigree, but Thomas de Gendt does.
Yeah, he does indeed. Been a few years since we've seen the best of Thomas de Gendt, admittedly, but at his best, he is a dangerous rider, and they'll be aware of that. The next climb that they have to negotiate is the Col de Néron. It's a Category 3 climb. They start it at 49.6 kilometres, so in just over 5 kilometres from now, they start to go up the Col de Néron. It's actually quite long, 7 kilometres in length, but an average gradient of just 3%, which is, well, you're into sort of false flat drag territory, aren't you, with 3%. But the climbs after that, the two Category 2 climbs of the Pas de Pérol and then the Col du Perthus are of a different order completely.
Yeah, again, it starts off, the Pas de Pérol, it starts off quite a big road, sort of steady, but then the final 3Ks of it are averaging over 11%, so that's over 1 in 11, I think they are, essentially. And that's 3Ks, and it's on a narrow road over the top. And if they go hard there, the last time Tour de France went over that, that's when I was racing the Tour de France, and it was our team that was on the front, and we really shut down the race. The road was narrow enough to just block the road at the front, and we went really easy over the top. So we didn't really get an idea of what it would be like to race. But if they race hard up there, you'll see that breakaway will lose an enormous amount of time, and we'll see the peloton shredded very quickly.
And we're back with the chasers. And they are still chasing. Cyril Gauthier from Étoile Mondiale leading Romain Sicard. So 2 Frenchmen at the front with another Belgian. Good day for Belgium. They've got so many riders up the road. Serge Pauwels in 3rd in that group of 6. But there are the leaders, featuring Greg van Avermaet, Thomas de Gendt and André Grivko. They've got an advantage that is now definitively beginning to come down. 14 minutes and 11 seconds with 54.5 kilometres remaining. Welcome back. In the time that you have been away, Vasyl Kirienka, single-handedly for Team Sky, has knocked off 30 seconds from the advantage that Greg van Avermaet, Thomas de Gendt and André Grivko have over the race. So suddenly, with 50.8 kilometres to go, there's much more seriousness in the chase, and we might yet have a bike race, David Miller.
Yeah, I think so. We've still got, let me see, they're going to be climbing now for another 10, 20 Ks, and then it drops down, descent straight up, another one, down, up. So it's that really is not conducive to these 3 riders. And you can already see the difference in the sort of the appearance of them. They're not quite as jaunty as, let's say, as Kirienka and the other riders at the front of the peloton, who are really starting to accelerate, whereas these guys knew that was going to happen, hence why they had to get as much time as they could when they did. If Greg van Avermaet hadn't forced it hard from that breakaway that's now left behind in the 6 riders they left, then they would have definitely got caught. They've forced the race now, and they've actually got a chance, and it's going to be close, but it all depends now. If they can get to the top of, we've got a Cat 3 coming up, and then there's a Cat 2, the Pas de Pérol at kilometre 185. If the peloton can get that under 10 minutes, probably to about 9 or 8 minutes, that's be their objective in order to stand a chance and be able to bring that break back on the finish line.
Under 50 kilometres for the first time today, and the group of 6 continue to do battle against the clock in no man's land. They're still 2 or 3 minutes further back down the road. 13:47 the advantage, though, between the 3 riders at the front and the yellow jersey group. Don't forget, Peter Sagan is still the yellow jersey of the Tour de France, his 3rd day in yellow for Tinkoff, who have a rider in this group up the road as well, Rafa Majka. And that's the chase, and Movistar are most certainly helping out now. So Sky and Movistar combining to bring these back. And onto the climb they go. The Col de Néron, 7.1 kilometres in length, 3% gradient. More of a drag than a climb, but it's going to be very sapping for these riders, especially if they're beginning to feel their advantage coming down. They'll be aware of the chase behind. André Grivko, the Ukrainian rider, 32 years old, beginning to share the work a bit more seriously now with Van Avermaet and Thomas de Gendt. He's already won in 2016. He won stage 3 and the general classification of a brand new 4-day stage race called La Méditerranéenne. And he did that by attacking breakaway companions Mathieu Lagneau and Jan Bakelants on the final day climb of that day, the Côte du Tanneron. And he held both those respective riders off by 18 and 22 seconds. So he's been here and done that on a stage race in very similar circumstances, albeit not on the Tour de France. He was away also in a breakaway at the Strade Bianchi, but was beaten on that occasion as well. It's his 7th year with Astana, hugely experienced, and a rider you know quite well.
Yeah, he's been one of those very solid riders. In 3 days of Depana in 2010, he was my competition when I was racing for GC, and he can time trial. He's a really good all-rounder, actually. We don't often see him, so he's often at the disposal of his team leaders, but he is one of those dream domestiques that have made a really a niche in what they do. Each team would like a Grivko and craves a Grivko, really, because you can count on them either to be behind looking for the leaders or getting in the break, do their job, and stand a chance in some of the smaller stage races to get a result themselves.
Yeah, very experienced man. Twice finished 5th in the World's Road Race Championships, 2008 and 2013. And his parents and his sister live in the Crimea. And at the end of the 2014 Tour de France, he actually auctioned his bike off for charity to help wounded Ukrainian soldiers. Strong rider. But the gap is continuing to come down. 13:35 now with 48.6 kilometres to go.
No, 48.6, although the climb said it was 7 Ks to go, they're actually going to be climbing till 31 Ks to go, which is the top of the Pas de Pérol. They have a little bit of respite around 176 where they descend for about 1 kilometre, but apart that, they're climbing the whole time, and it's almost like a ramp test you do, in that it keeps getting steeper and steeper to the last 3 kilometres of the Pérol, where it really is a narrow road and over 10% for 2-3 kilometres. So this is the opportunity for the peloton to bring back a lot of time in the next 48 Ks. That's where the breakaway is. The peloton we see here is actually 7 or 8 kilometres behind them. That's what that time gap equates to. So they're at 56 Ks to go. As you can see how big the time gap is as well already between the three riders and the 6 riders chasing. So we've got definitely, I think that Sky will be aware of this, and Movistar in particular. Movistar have most to gain by this because they have a chance of winning the stage with Valverde and possibly taking the leader's jersey. So that's probably one of the main reasons they're contributing to Sky's chase.
Nonetheless, they're doing a good job. Thomas de Gendt. He's got dual ambitions, or 3 different ambitions. He's looking for a stage win if he possibly can. He's looking to improve his time in the general classification, which would come, of course, with a stage win. Greg Van Avermaet has the extraordinary opportunity presented to him of a yellow jersey on the Tour de France. Former stage winner of the Tour de France, but this is a different order of honour altogether, if you can get that. And at the back of the peloton now, Brian Coquard. Great sprint from him yesterday, and he was absolutely delighted, even though he was missed out to Marcel Kittel by, what was it in the end? I think it was 28 millimetres of tyre after the longest stage on the Tour de France.
And that would have been the biggest win of his career. But the manner in which he sprinted, I think that would give him so much confidence, because he was coming up on Kittel so fast. He'd come by Greipel, Sagan, so he's up there sprinting with the best in the world, and that's going to mean that tomorrow, any of these sprint days now, he can go in there with the confidence that he's going to be respected, and his team will work for him, and he'll get positioning more easily, and might even get that win that he came so close to yesterday.
Yeah, I think he's placed himself firmly, at least by his own reckoning, and few would disagree now, in and among the big favourites on the sprinter stages. And we've got a rolling stage tomorrow, which is an opportunity for the sprinters to show their craft again. 5K to the top of this long, grinding climb. Quite a wide road, so it's not a climb full of switchbacks and steep gradients. It's just uphill, and you almost have to time trial your way up and just find a rhythm that works and hold it. Agony, really.
This is about as easy as it's going to get now for the rest of this stage, because it does get steeper, and then once it gets to the top of the next one, top of this one, then they 2 or 3 Ks, falls flat, drop down for a K, then they got a proper climb that will begin, and then from that moment on, it's torturous the rest of the stage. It's up and down, technical descents, straight into climbs, which is horrible, so you don't get to clear out the lactate in your legs in the descent, and I think that break's really going to suffer a lot, whereas the peloton will be carrying its momentum, and they've really got a carrot at the end of the stick now, because I think they'll start to see, look at the 13:16, the time gap's now coming down, I wouldn't say quickly, but steadily for sure.
Yeah, it is. Thomas de Gendt standing up now, stamping on his pedals a bit, trying to force a different pace, accelerate a little, get a bit more out of his frame on this point of the climb. Can't go too deep. So much racing still to come. 46.8 kilometres is an awful lot of territory, undulating, rolling, mostly uphill territory between here, now this point, and the finish line at Le Lieuron. A ski station. You can ski in this part of the Auvergne when the snow sits thick in the winter.
Look at the time gap now, 13 minutes. So at 65 kilometres, it was at 15 minutes. At 55 kilometres, it was at 14 minutes. And now at 46, it's at 13. So they're bringing back a minute every 10 minutes, a minute every 10 kilometres, which is exactly where they need it to be at the moment. And that will accelerate as the stage gets harder, as these guys get tired and the big guns start firing behind.
Fantastic weather now, real Tour de France-y weather. Blue skies in the mid-20s, wonderful racing conditions, and we have a race in our hands. For the first time, the advantage is less than 30 minutes on the road. One kilometre to go to the top of the Col de Néron, then a short descent, and then they're straight up the Pas de Péronne. The advantage holding firm for now. Greg Van Avermaet just taking from his team car the necessary wherewithal to get himself over the next 43.4k and take the leader's jersey of the Tour de France. And he moves to the front. Little reaction from Thomas de Gendt. Van Avermaet looks strong as an ox at this point, and Grivko also. So it's a very, very powerful trio, and that's why they're proving hard to track down and hard to chase down as well. Team Sky and Movistar are doing the work. At some point you would imagine they might be joined by some of the other teams as well, when it gets a little bit closer perhaps, if it gets a little bit closer.
Yeah, it's always one of those things. Everyone sort of watches each other and bides their time and bluffs a little bit. But as soon as there's a sniff chance of there being a stage win or anything that's beneficial to them, then they'll start to contribute. But at the moment, it was only Sky, who are the most powerful team, who are the defending Tour champions, who at some point, Tinkoff obviously weren't going to ride, although they have the yellow jersey because they had Micah in the break. So that was a smart move by them, because then they can just bluff it. And they can also say, well, look, we don't expect to keep the yellow jersey today. We know it's hard. It's your responsibility. You are the favourite for the Tour de France. It's up to you, Team Sky, to keep a sense of order in the race. And that sense of order was just maintaining it and not letting this group go and take 30 minutes, which has been known to happen. I mean, it happened in the 2002 Tour de France, I think, or 2001, where a group went away and took 34 minutes and affected the whole race.
2006 as well with Oscar Pereiro.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. That's and so, you know, you need a big team like Team Sky to assume their responsibility and sometimes just do that, even though it's like you're relying on the sort of big brother in the peloton to kind of keep some sort of sense of order and take care of everybody, and that's what Team Sky did. Now Movistar have eventually moved up and given a rider, and here we have Thomas de Gendt going for the points again. That's his objective today. I think that, and also probably the stage win, because Greg Van Avermaet, we now know, is the virtual leader on the road. He may as well be wearing the yellow jersey right now. He's got such a big gap, but Thomas de Gendt will know that, and he'll be riding in the knowledge, and he may have already discussed with Van Avermaet, look, I'll contribute, I'll give you everything I have, but I'm going to chase the stage win, and I don't expect you to compete with me for the stage win. Which sometimes you'll do a deal like that. I mean, it's fair enough, because equally Thomas de Gendt could say, look, you've got the yellow jersey, it's your responsibility right now, I'm not going to help you. But so you'll come to a gentleman's agreement where, look, I'll help you, but I want the stage honours, and we might say the mountains classification. But they both got to take into account, they've got Grivko in there, who's riding a pretty wily race at the moment. We don't see him doing as much work as those two. And he's a smart bike rider, and we know he's got a great pedigree for getting results himself, even though he is a domestique. So, you know, we're going to have quite an interesting race on our hands if they can hold off the peloton, which, to be honest, is a bit touch and go because it's so hard these next 40 kilometres.
And this is the reason why you're in the Cantal Mountains. Give their name to the famous cheese. Les agriculteurs du Cantal, the farmers, greet you, and they greet the Tour de France. Volcanic region, the Massif Central, huge area, and they call it La France Profonde, right in the middle, deepest France, if you like. Sparsely populated in parts as well, and remote, hard to get to, long winding roads, not the big motorways. They don't crisscross this part of France at all. Has its own distinct character. And this is the back of the peloton. There's the green jersey of Mark Cavendish, and the sprinters are beginning to get together. So Gruppetto, as they call it, might well be forming on the slopes of this particular climb. News of other riders just going off the back as well, and it won't surprise you at all to hear that Michael Mercure and Sam Bennett are distanced, and they are dropped off the back. The two riders who fell in appalling circumstances in Mercure's case on stage 1. He's still in the race, as are all 198, amazingly, after into stage 5. But Bennett and Mercure have just suffered and suffered and suffered day after day, and they're still suffering out the back today. Good luck to them to make it in without being eliminated today.
Now that's interesting, seeing the sprinters coming out. Movistar come to the front. I was just about to say, I'm sure they'd have wanted to hold on longer. You don't form the gruppetto until as close to the finish as possible. And I'm sure most of those guys had the objective of waiting till the climb of the Pas de Pérol, which is not even this one. This is the Cat 3. They've still got 5Ks to go. So that shows for Movistar are now chasing the stage win, which is great for us because it makes great racing, but it's not so good for these guys.
No, it's going to hurt the back of the race and the front of the race. And I'm still not clear exactly how this group of 6 will influence and what role they'll have to play, really, as the chase unfolds and the whole thing contracts down. So the front of the race, the 3 riders at the front, and the peloton chasing hard now behind are going to telescope, or what's the opposite of telescope? Contract, compress the whole thing back together, and eventually these riders will be the meat in the sandwich.
This is going to turn into the way Movistar are riding right there. I mean, that was you could see it was a high speed. They've all of a sudden, which is always quite a good way of doing it, is just they've been sitting there quite patient. This must have been a tactic. You look how strung out that is now. That's when that's the peloton going at a really high pace now. We can see at the back, riders just consistently getting dropped off, and that's going to continue now for the rest of this stage.
That was a very clear view that we just had at the back of there of the formation of the gruppetto. Mark Cavendish's green jersey picked out by the cameras, and as the helicopter just passed by this absolutely stunning mountain pass that they're going over now. 39.3 kilometers of racing still to go, and they are climbing the Col de Néron. Pretty soon, though, at 36.4 kilometers, the breakaway trio will start to climb the Pas de Pérol. So in just under 3 kilometers time, or the Puy-Marie as it is known, the first Cat 2 climb will be breached of this edition of the Tour de France, and it is a proper test with some very steep slopes. And the advantage now under 12 minutes, and it's almost single file in the peloton. Fantastic image that is. Big teams of trains now. Movistar on the front, Team Sky in second wheel. You can see just about the yellow jerseys of Tinkoff looking after Alberto Contador, and of course at this point still Peter Sagan, who's still in the race and still in the yellow jersey. Barely mentioned him. Would you dismiss Peter Sagan's capabilities on a day like this of actually holding on to the race lead, David?
Peter Sagan, you never underestimate. We've seen him do some great climbing in the past, Tour of Switzerland, where he's in one mountain stage. It's not summit finish, but coming off a mountain. Same in Tour of California last year. He only lost a minute on Mount Baldy, which is a very hard climb. But this is the Tour de France, and I think there's a much higher pedigree of climbers here and much more at stake. And also, this final is and this is, we can see the damage that's been done on the Cat 3. They haven't even hit the two hard Cat 2s, which are going to come up after this. But Movistar had to do this. If they wanted to try and put Valverde into the leader's jersey, they had to make the race as difficult as possible to guarantee that they were going to shake Sagan. And also, Valverde excels the harder the race is. They need to whittle it down as much as possible, and they needed, in order to do that, they couldn't wait until the penultimate climb or the final climb. They had to do it a long way out now to make sure they cause as much devastation as possible.
Be a tremendous tactic to employ, putting Alejandro Valverde into the yellow jersey, and Nairo Quintana. Instinctively, you'd think maybe that would be the last thing that Quintana would want, but actually it might be just the ticket for him.
Well, it's good. It puts the whole team in a position where they can sit up the fronts, and they're in a defensive position as well. It means they're more in control. It's then up to Team Sky to attack, and Nairo Quintana could even go as far as just marking out and refusing to ride with people to say that he's protecting Valverde. But at the same time, I think that this is as much a tactic for Nairo Quintana as it is for Valverde. They want to start making the race as hard as possible, and that way they can hopefully get a test, an indication today of how good Team Sky are, how strong they are, and I think that's as much what they're doing as anything else.
Well, the graphic indicating the time gap is just ticking down all the time. It's like a clock, a stopwatch unfolding and declining as the passing kilometres go. So too does the advantage dwindle. 11 minutes and 17 seconds at the moment. Chase group, last time we heard 2 minutes and 55 seconds back on the 3 riders up the road. Well, it's now gone out to 3:20. So some of the impetus has gone out of that group of 6, or a combination of that happening and those 3 riders are still doing a phenomenally good job of holding on to their lead at the front of the race. So that is their speeds at the moment. The chase group are doing 41 kilometres an hour. The Tête de la Course, the 3 riders at the front of the race, are doing 52 kilometres an hour. And the peloton, as you can see, are climbing. They're climbing, by the way, at 37 kilometres an hour. But the 3 riders up the road are descending. Little glimpse there of the yellow jersey of Peter Sagan, still surrounded by his Tinkoff team.
And we can see as well, all the sprinters have been dropped now. I think just had in the race that Andre Greipel as well. So it goes to show just how special a rider is Peter Sagan. He's been competing with the sprinters all stages, and now he's sitting right up at the front on a climbing stage.
There's Andre Greipel. Things did not go his way at all yesterday. Greipel is a very determined character, and he's tough as nails. And there'll be plenty more opportunities for Greipel, starting tomorrow, in fact. And now they start to climb the Pas de Péronne.
Now this, although it says average 5.3, you can see here there on that graphic, its final 2 or 3 kilometres are over 11%. That's what that black indicates. That means it's over 10% gradient, and that's the worst case scenario for these guys, because there's no hiding there, and we can see what's going on. They'll have heard on their radios that Movistar have begun the chase, and so they know that now it's they're just got to battle, because they're just going to be losing time every kilometre.
None of them are specialist climbers. Greg Van Avermaet certainly isn't. Classics rider. De Gendt can climb, but you wouldn't call him a specialist. He's more of an all-rounder. And the same probably applies to Andrei Grivko as well, although on paper Grivko probably goes uphill the best of those 3.
Yeah, I think they all have their days, for sure. It's Grivko and De Gendt have a better track record at climbing, but I think at this point in the race they're all very evenly matched. They've been on a breakaway all day. I don't think there's going to be any standout. We'll have one who's fresher. It'll just come down to who's fueled best and who's ridden with the most, well, been most cautious in that breakaway, which at the moment does look like Grivko. I think Greg Van Avermaet has obviously had the most to gain, chasing the yellow jersey, so has gone very deep, and Thomas De Gendt is going for stage run in the mountains points. So those 2 really are trying to get something. So Grivko could be the dark horse who might try and escape on his own at some point.
They go over the top of the climb with 31 kilometres exactly. And then it is a descent, and then they'll tackle the Col du Perthus, another Category 2 climb, not dissimilar to the one they are on now, the Pas de Péronne, also featuring black sections over 10%. And then there's a very narrow, windy, twisty descent, all the way to a strange run-in, the final sort of 6 or 7 kilometres, very unusual.
Yeah, it is. It's going to make for great racing, because although it's not a metre of flat, but it's not overly hard climbing either. It's a sort of mixture, and it's going to be very... It's opportune for aggressive and attacking riding. Although saying that, once you come off that descent, off the Perthus, you're on a very big road, and it's constantly falls flat, sort of escalating a little bit towards the top, but with 5Ks to go, and that's when it drops down a very technical descent and then kicks up again for the last K. But it's going to be interesting to see. But at the moment, we can see how strong Movistar is, and we've been talking about how strong Team Sky is, but we're seeing here that they're going to be matched. So the 2 favourites in the race, Nairo Quintana and Chris Froome, both have phenomenal teams around them.
Well, confirmation of the fact that De Gendt took himself another 2 points at the Col de Néron, and he's breathing down the neck on the road of Jasper Stuyven now. He has 4 points in the King of the Mountains competition and needs just 1 more to draw level. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in a minute. We continue our odyssey through the Cantal Mountains in the Auvergne, and the lead is now single figures, under 10 minutes for Greg Van Avermaet, who's labouring a little on the steeper slopes of the climb that they are now negotiating. the tough Category 2, the first Category 2 climb of the Tour de France, the Pas de Pérols. For anyone who's ridden over the Puy-Marie, as it is more commonly known, it is a really tough climb. 32.6k still to go of rolling volcanic landscape, and we certainly have a very, very close battle here, and it's a close call whether these three will be able to ride out a stage win between them, or whether they'll be swept up. And if they are swept up, it might well be on the final climb of the day, the Category 3 Col de Fond de Serre. You think it's going to be tight, don't you, David? I mean, your money is on the catch, but not a foregone conclusion.
A close catch at the moment, that's for sure. I mean, if they keep this pace up, Movistar are a team that's strong enough and has the firepower for this chase not to suddenly shut down, which often is what happens. You have a team that takes the front of the peloton, gets excited, brings the gap down really quickly, but then all of a sudden explodes and then it stabilizes again. But I think Movistar, with the amount of quality they have, this chase is just going to continue and continue. And then it's in their interest to do that. They're committed now. Look at them going. I mean, you can see, and they've still got 8 riders there in total, I think. Yeah, I think that's 8 riders. So they really are kind of. I believe they can do this, but it's going to be horrible for the rest of the peloton because they're just not going to stop going. And Grivko, as we
Grivko's gone. Yeah,
we thought he might have been saving himself. Evidently not. He was obviously suffering the most. And now we're seeing Greg van Avermaet and Thomas de Gendt clearly were simply the strongest, and Grivko was along for the ride. Oh.
Well, the Ukrainians popped off the back now for Astana. Grivko no longer able to hold the pace of the 2 Belgians from BMC and Lotto Soudal. So it looks like the end of the day for him, and that's not going to help the prospects, it has to be said, of Greg van Avermaet and Thomas de Gendt. 3 in this situation is much better than 2. Having said that, Grivko wasn't doing the lion's share of the work. The 2 Belgian riders had been sharing it out. At the back of the somewhat reduced peloton, still a large peloton, but riders beginning to drop off the back. Daniel Tekla-Heimanot from Dimension Data.
What a glimpse of Fabian Cancellara as well. So that's the next wave of riders that are being dropped. We saw the sprinters get dropped from the climb before. Now the Gruppetto proper will start to form, and we can see that the damage is being done. And there he is, Fabian Cancellara. So he'll just find his rhythm, and I think that's a good indication that the Gruppetto is forming. There's Stuyven's just in front of him. So now I think the pace. Steve Cummings there on the left.
Yep. Not going to be a Steve Cummings day, as some people might have expected. Daniel Tekla-Heimanot fought hard to get himself in the breakaway today on another hunt for a King of the Mountains opportunity. Didn't work for him today. And there's Jasper Stuyven, who is watching on as Thomas de Gendt is going to take the jersey from him, almost certainly today. De Gendt only has 1.2 kilometres before he goes over the top of the Pas de Pérols in the company of Greg van Avermaet, and there are 5 points available for the winner at that point.
We just saw Simon Gerrans, who I think had hoped, if this day hadn't panned out like this, would have been a day that would have suited him. It's very like Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but you can see just how fast Movistar are going, the way this is all splitting up to pieces, because these are quality riders that we're seeing being distanced.
And these are the steep slopes, well over 10% towards the summit of the Puy-Marie. De Gendt, Greg van Avermaet is having a tremendous ride here to hold on to the wheel of Thomas de Gendt. Still got 9.5 minutes at this point. So it's tough, it's interesting, it's really fascinatingly poised, and you could argue a case either way for the success of those 2 riders now, or for the catch. Edvald Boasson-Hagen, the next rider to start to lose contact with the peloton, and that is another indication of just how hard they're going. And the cohesion in the group of 6 further down the road as well is beginning to break. Romain Sicard drops off, and Florent...
Well, Romain Sicard was an ex-Tour de l'Avenir winner, so he's always been one of the favourites, and the French favourites, who hasn't quite managed to fulfil the potential everyone expected of him.
Florian Vachon was the name I was just struggling to get out there. The Fortuné Vital Concept rider is also losing contact with the other 4 in the chase group.
Tony Galopin. So yeah, I mean, Movistar have to put this high pace on, because there's only one for the breakaway, the Greg van Avermaet and Thomas de Gendt. They have just over 1 kilometre to get to the summit. Now, it is going to be a very long kilometre, time-wise, because it is so steep. And essentially what the Movistar have to do is bring back as much time as possible as they can on this climb, because when they get to the top of the 10-kilometre descent, where the 2 riders off the front are going to lose very, very little time. So they have to do as much damage as possible when it's going uphill and when it's going steep uphill. And we can see they've still got almost a full team there.
Yeah, a combination of Winner Anacona, Nelson Oliveira, the Izaguri brothers, and Jesus Gerardo doing an awful lot of damage for Movistar. What a strong climbing team they've brought to the party. And De Gendt and Van Avermaet still sharing the work, but looks like Van Avermaet is just, well, he's back on the wheel of De Gendt. But if there is a weaker rider at this point when they're going uphill, it's probably Greg Van Avermaet. The French national champion losing contact with the pelotons. He's the next rider to go off the back. And those are the 4 chasers now, having dropped the 2 French riders that we just saw. So what remains of that chase group? Well, you've got Rafa Majka from Tinkoff, Cyril Gauthier, very strong climber from AG2R Le Mondial, Serge Pauwels, who goes uphill very well as well, and Bartosz Husarski from Bora Argon 18. Another day where they get a rider in a breakaway.
And Movistar are going to have to pace this intelligently, because with the time gap as it is, 8 minutes 30, we can see how quickly it's coming down. I think these guys have still got about 500 metres or so to get to the top of this climb, maybe a bit more actually. They need to get this down to about 7 minutes at the top of this, because then it's going to just sit there at 7 minutes till they start the next climb, and then they're going to have to bring it back another 4 minutes, and then off the descent of that, when they get to the bottom there, they're going to have to bring back as much all the way to the finish line.
Well, this man is a pure climber. Dani Navarro, the GC leader of Cofidis, who are a rather rudderless outfit, it has to be said, on this Tour de France. Without Nasser Bouhanni, they would have hoped Navarro would have held his place in the peloton for a little bit longer.
Vicioso.
Angel Vicioso did so much work yesterday on the front for Alexander Christoph Vicioso. No wonder he's hurting today. 400 metres to go for De Gendt and Van Avermaet. They'll be watching back home in Belgium and cheering these 2 men on. Even if Greg Van Avermaet does get the yellow jersey, as you've already indicated and explained to us, David, there's no prospect of him actually winning the Tour de France, Van Avermaet, and it's been far too long that Belgium have had a credible GC contender in the Tour de France.
Yeah, the closest they had was Van den Broek, but he seems to have come off the boil the last few years, although he was up there battling with the top GC riders for a few years. But apart from him, there's just not been anybody for a while now. But that's, as we spoke about a couple of days ago, their speciality really is the classics, the early season cobbled races, and it's almost an anomaly when they have a GC rider come out of their country.
And they did have Eddie Merckx after all, didn't they? So they can rest on those laurels for another 50 years. If you've got Eddie Merckx in your national history, you don't really need to prove any more points.
So Majka's now coming into his own. We're quite surprised that he'd missed that move, because being a past winner of the best climbers jersey at Tour de France, he thought this might have been where he'd be opening his account. But Thomas De Gendt, this rider, seems to have taken the lead on that one, and his ambition will just get to the top of this, get the points, and hopefully, which I think they will, get to the top of the next one as well, and that will give him a fairly good start in the mountains competition.
It's not going to be a massive group that gets over the top of this climb, and it's not the last climb of the day either. It's the Pas de Pérols. The Col du Pertus is the next one, and it's also a Category 2 climb, and it's not dissimilar. So the damage will continue. Thomas Voeckler on the attack, and in domestique duty yesterday.
Rohan Dennis there on the left BMC, was quite surprising. He's looking very fit at the moment, and would have thought he'd get over.
There's a GC man as well, Tom Dumoulin, who came so close, didn't he, to winning the Vuelta last year. The big Dutch time trialist. He's going backwards, and he has lost contact with that pace being set by Movistar.
He'll be very disappointed by that, Tom Dumoulin. So there's a lot of expectations on him coming into this race.
Over the top they go of the first category climb on the Tour de France. The Pas de Pérols is breached, and Thomas De Gendt takes 5 points there, and with that, the King of the Mountains jersey. There are just 7 points remaining from this moment, and Thomas De Gendt already has 7 points in the locker, so it's not a totally done deal yet, but almost a given that Thomas De Gendt will be the King of the Mountains at the end of the day. 7:48 their advantage that they take over the top.
So Movistar are losing riders now. That's 2 riders they've now lost from the work, but they've shrunk that gap down to under 8 minutes, and they've not even reached the top yet. So this is going to be interesting. We'd said they need to get it down under 8 minutes if they want to stand a chance of victory by the top, and they're going to have it way below that, probably by under 7 minutes by the time they get to the top. So this is, and there goes Peter Sagan.
Well, that's the end, is it, for the yellow jersey? I don't think he's going to be able to recover from here. This is a brutal pace being set by Movistar, and it's damaged the yellow jersey of Peter Sagan. He drops off the back, and there's no point in fighting this too much. He has to acknowledge that it's gone for the day, and the jersey is no longer his.
No, and I think he'll drop anchor now and wait for the gruppetto behind. They'll be forming because there's no point in him battling on. Tomorrow's another good day for him, and he's got the green jersey now to focus on.
Movistar still have 5 men. Team Sky, well, Geraint Thomas is there. You can see Chris Froome just behind him. They've got 4 at least still there. And Vincenzo Nibali, well, that is a surprise. The man who won the Giro d'Italia this year, coming to the Tour de France with uncertain ambitions and perhaps arguably uncertain form. He doesn't look like he's in too much distress, but he is no longer in contact with that group of climbers. Nibali going backwards.
Well, Fabio Aru will be happy. There's now no discussion regards who's the leader of Astana for this race.
Well, that is something of a surprise.
They see Movistar here now. They've only got 2 or 3 riders left to work. 2 riders really. Three, because there's Nairo Quintana and Alejandro Valverde, obviously are the leaders out of those 5 riders that are sitting there. And they've still got 29 kilometres to go to the finish. So they need to keep riding unless Nairo Quintana or Valverde attacks beforehand once they've run out of teammates.
7.5 minutes was the advantage that the 2 leaders took over the top of the Col de Peyrol, and Rafa Majka leads the chasers to that point as well. The first Category 2 climb on the Tour de France, and the chase group is being blown apart by Rafa Majka, Polish road race champion. Lost an awful lot of time and started the day in 194th place in the Tour de France, over 17 minutes down, got himself in the breakaway. That didn't work at the first time of asking, but now he's attacking this group of chasers, and he goes solo pretty much over the top, taking with him Serge Pauwels, if he can just get on his wheel on the descent, Bartosz Szostalski and Cyril Gauthier. But Majka, the strongest of that quartet of riders, who are the second group on the road, chasing down these 2, Greg Van Avermaet and Thomas de Gendt. So now it is downhill. Peter Sagan, the yellow jersey, in trouble on the Pas de Peyrol, and sitting up. Discretion the better part of Valour. He tried for as long as he could to hold the pace, but the pace being set was just too high. Movistar and Sky beginning to hurt everybody, and surprisingly, here's another casualty too. Vincenzo Nibali doesn't look too bothered by it, but he is not where he wants to be, and look how small that group is now. With 2 more climbs to come, that's all that remains of the selection.
Yeah, the race is opening the race up completely, because we can see there's going to be mainly leaders left. There's not going to be many domestiques left to control this race once those last 2 Movistar riders are done. It's only Sky that seem to have, as we expected, the biggest presence. But beyond that, it's TJ. There's only three BMC riders. One of those, Samu Sanchez, maybe it is, with TJ Van Garderen and Richie Porte. And Tinkoff have Roman Kreuziger. And Alberto Contador we haven't seen yet, but
he's there. Contador is there. The white jersey, I think, of Alaphilippe is still there. Romain Bardet is there, the AG2R La Mondiale rider. The big 2 for BMC are there as well. Richie Porte visible in the red jersey there. TJ Van Garderen also. Nairo Quintana looks like he's barely breathing at the moment. So comfortable with still got 3 or 4 domestiques working with him. Chris Froome out of his saddle. Conventionally for him, which is an indication of just how steep the gradient is at that point of the climb. Still they go backwards.
It's Kirienka, who's done a lot of work at the beginning, so his team make it that far is impressive considering the turns he did. So this is it now. You can see that most of those key workers are now being dropped. So we really are, the leaders are left with their #1 lieutenants, if you like.
Mikel Landa, surprisingly perhaps, one of the Sky riders who has been dropped off. And there you catch a glimpse of Alberto Contador on the left-hand side of the road. Roman Kreuziger is the other Tinkoff rider, still there. And Greg Van Avermaet is absolutely flying down this mountain. De Gendt getting himself as aerodynamically tucked in as possible to catch the flying Belgian. But I wonder if this is a significant move from Van Avermaet. A little bit of a gap opened up there. De Gendt struggling to hold the wheel. Still, they go backwards.
And it was on this descent in 2011 where Vinokurov crashed out, where we had that big pile-up and the race almost became neutralised. It is a fast and at times dangerous descent with some blind corners. What makes it even more painful is you come off it and go bang up the next climb. So it's going to be hard for these guys who've gone, because they're going hard here. This is definitely, I mean, that's a group of, what, 20 riders, 25 riders. Alaphilippe at the back of that group in the white jersey. So he's not looking as good as we expected. Dan Martin, his teammate in the middle and the right behind Roman Kreuziger, is looking better than his teammate Alaphilippe. There he is, Alaphilippe on the left of the screen, out the saddle, battling a bit, but it's hard to tell whether he is in trouble or not. Thibaut Pinot, and there we have.
Oh, well, there's a move up the road, and it's come from BMC, so that's a big move, and it's come from Richie Porte. So Porte, as you suspected, well, he's just gone off the front just to get a water bottle. So full salam, as you were. Wasn't an attack, but it could have been.
I was hoping. I have to. We discussed that before. I sort of hoped that Richie Porte would go today because it seemed like a perfect day for him to go, an in-between day. But there's Adam Yates in the back. Alaphilippe definitely not looking so comfortable, but this is the hardest climb of the day. He's got to get over this and then hang on. I mean, look how small that group is. We'd expect to see that at the top of one of the high mountains in the Alps. So you can see the pace that the Movistar has said has been infernal.
Oh, it's really tough now, isn't it? Matthias Frank, the GC hope for IM Cycling, the next rider to take his place at the back of that line. Domenico Pozzovivo is still there, only just. Thibaut Pinot, the leader of FDJ, has one rider alongside him, so they're still there. Now you can see Dan Martin's blue jersey in about 10th wheel on the right side of the road. Who has Chris Froome still got alongside him? Mikael Nieve, and Geraint Thomas is still there, so a good ride from him today. Sergio Henao and Chris Froome. 4 riders from Team Sky, 3 from Movistar, and over the top they go. The big favourites, none of them have been dropped off, with the exception of Vincenzo Nibali, and the yellow jersey is virtually coming to a halt on these steep slopes now. Being cheered on by the crowds here, acknowledging his valour and his popularity, but he's all on his own, and it's brutally hard now for the yellow jersey of Peter Sagan.
He will just ride now. He knows there's big groups behind him, so there's no reason to panic. And I think he's done yellow jersey proud, but there's no point in wasting energy now. There will have been a gruppetto that will have fallen behind.
Can he smile? Of course he can. He's Peter Sagan. Can probably have a little conversation, a shrug of the shoulders. Why not?
Probably pop a wheelie in a minute.
Yeah. Well, it was fun while it lasted. Peter Sagan in the yellow jersey, but the time caps that will be opened up on this first mountain stage today would preclude any hope that he has of regaining the yellow jersey. For him, it'll revert to green. And as he said the other day, if I lose the yellow jersey, I'll still have the green jersey. And if I lose the green jersey, well, World Champions bands. So don't worry about Peter Sagan. He'll be all right.
Now, it's an interesting situation for Movistar. They went so hard that they're now left with just one domestique and still a long way to go. Still 2 climbs to go. And so it's going to be interesting whether they can move into aggressive now they've destroyed everything.
Just under 7 minutes the advantage, 22.6 kilometres to go, and the race is in full cry. We're going to take a short break. The leaders are 300 metres into the penultimate climb of the day, the Col de Pertus, a Category 2 climb, 4.4 kilometres in length, average 8% gradient, but steeper towards the top. They have a 3-minute advantage to the group of 4 riders being headed by Rafa Majka, trying to track them down, and a 6-minute and 50-second or thereabouts advantage over the main group of favourites containing the white jersey of Alaphilippe. But a number of very interesting names in that group. Vincenzo Nibali has been dropped, and he and Tom Dumoulin are in a little group of their own, and further back down the road Peter Sagan is just riding to the finish, all on his own.
You can see that Chris Froome's moved up there into 3rd position because he knows his descent's renowned for being dangerous, and he's actually got to move himself in front of the Movistar riders, which goes to show how seriously he's taking it.
That was a little glimpse of the Vincenzo Nibali group, in which Tony Martin finds himself as well, and as I said, Tom Dumoulin. But these two, well, they've had each other for company for some time now, part of a 3-man move that attacked the original 9-man breakaway of the day. They dropped André Grivko, and then there were just 2 Belgians, but 2 of the best, Thomas de Gent and Greg Van Avermaet. Van Avermaet, the best placed of these 2 by an enormous distance in the general classification, started the day 18 seconds down, and he's got 6 minutes and 50 seconds to hold off Alaphilippe and the others.
Now that time gap has been tumbling down the last 40 kilometres, but what's going to happen now is because Movistar essentially used up all their teammates, Mauro Quintana, Alejandro Valverde only have 1 rider left. Well, that's all we can see. Johnny Izagirre, who's got his job now to go as long as he can, which means he's going to have to pace it quite carefully. So this is probably going to stall for a little bit, this time gap. They might bring back a chunk, but the moment he really runs out of gas, then it's all going to stall unless somebody attacks from behind or Sky take over. Well, there's no particular, even if Sky take over, they'll probably just set a conservative pace. It would take Alaphilippe and Dan Martin to then try and bring it back, but by the looks of it, Alaphilippe is on his hands and knees just hanging on, and Dan Martin isn't going to risk riding on his own and getting jumped himself.
So it may yet work in the favour of the two riders up the road. He'd be a brave man to lump a substantial bet on the outcome either way at this stage, but has it just tilted in favour of the two men?
I think so. I mean, this is often what we just talked about before, is that the chase is furious for a while, and the team uses up all its domestiques, and then it's left there with just the leaders and nobody else to chase it down. So they've set that infernal pace, they've ripped the race to pieces, closed the gap down, blown the peloton into numerous groups. There's only about 25 riders in this group that we're seeing here, but you look, Movistar have just got that one rider left there, and it looks like behind it's Sergio Henao, and then in third place is Chris Froome, and then we have Alejandro Valverde, Nairo Quintana, and then behind that we have Geraint Thomas, Mikel Landa and Wout Poels. So Sky are the dominant position here. I think they've got the most riders in this group, but it's not necessarily up to them to close that gap down. They'll be quite happy with it remaining how it is now and just keeping Chris Froome safe.
Jürgen van den Broek, the Katusha rider, just hanging on to the coattails of Adam Yates. In front of him, Thibaut Pinot has, I think it's Steve Morabito with him from FDJ. And Alberto Contador is also, worryingly for him, towards the rear of that increasingly small, well, actually it's stabilised now, hasn't it, group of GC favourites.
I think actually Alberto Contador we saw before, I think that might be him, because he was dropping back to try and get his team car. And obviously this descent's so technical, his team car can't get to him. We don't know why that is. I presume it must be for a bottle or some food or something, unless, hopefully not for him, he has another mechanical problem or something, or a puncture. Now that little red flag in the corner means it's 3 kilometres to the summit, and it's 3 kilometres very hard, much like the final 2 or 3 kilometres of the previous climb. So you can see just how steep it is here.
All or nothing. Nothing in reserve now for Thomas de Gendt, who looks beaten by Greg Van Avermaet, just switching the side of the road, and there's an attack. He's gone, hasn't he? Greg Van Avermaet has left Thomas de Gendt standing, and it's going to be one man against the rest of the race now in a bid for glory, a stage win and the yellow jersey. Van Avermaet can hold nothing in reserve now. 17.4 kilometres separate him from arguably one of the results of his career.
This is a massive ride if he can do this, and this is the best move for him to do, because if he was feeling just a little bit stronger, now he's in full time trial mode, and you see that's an impressive jump at this point in the race. They've been off the fronts all day, and now he's been the one that's been forcing it the whole time, and he's still got it within him to do an acceleration, and didn't stand a chance there, to be honest. I think it's clear now that behind Greg Van Avermaet everybody's just scattered from that original break, and he's got to hold off that chasing for 25 riders what's left of the peloton.
Well, all or nothing for Greg Van Avermaet. He's on his own. Nobody can help him now. Time trial mode for the Belgian. 18 seconds is all he has to do to hold them off. 6:39, a big advantage, and 4 chasers still trying to get across to him. One kilometre to the summit of the Col du Perthus for Greg Van Avermaet, who's defended his lead admirably so far on this climb. The last Cat 2 climb of the day. Still got just under 6 minutes advantage over the big chase group, the third group effectively on the roads, the group of all the favourites and the white jersey of Julien Alaphilippe. That's his competition. That's the immediate threat to his prospects of winning the yellow jersey on the day. This is the second group on the road. There were 4 of them. There are now only, well, that's actually the third group, because Thomas de Gendt is somewhere in between Van Avermaet and those two. Rafa Majka and Bartosz Szarski trying to track down, first of all, the Lotto Soudal man, and then get across to Greg Van Avermaet, if at all possible. But he's riding brilliantly.
He's looking strong, and you'd expect at this point him to look a lot weaker and to have cracked, and yet he seems to be, he's settled into rhythm, and he knows he's got to hold this. He's got to get to the top of here, which is 800 metres. He's then going to get a bit of a respite from the descent, and the good thing for him, it's a technical descent, which was for a single rider is great, because it compromises the chase behind. So he knows he won't lose much time there, so he can recover a bit, eat, drink when he can, so he's going to have to go down there as fast as he possibly can, and then he's going to have his time trial to the finish, which is, he's got to pace that just right, because all he needs to have is 20 seconds when he gets to the finish to take that yellow jersey and the stage.
Danny Moreno was the last of the domestiques from Movistar to do their shift at the front, and what remains is simply Alejandro Valverde and Nairo Quintana. Those two riders, the two leaders, if you like, although Quintana is effectively the undisputed leader in terms of the Tour de France. But what about Alejandro Valverde? What about his prospects today? Well, they don't look great because Van Avermaet is so strong, he's holding them off. 15 kilometres to go and only about 500 metres now to the top of this climb.
And what's interesting is what we said would happen. The chase behind us stalled at 6 minutes because there's no more domestiques to bring it back, and it's even going up a bit, which just goes to show what an incredible ride Greg Van Avermaet's doing. But he's settled into his rhythm, and now that infernal chase that the Movistar created blew out. They probably should have paced it a little better in order to have riders that could go all the way to the finish line. But now we have Alaphilippe, we can see him on the back really just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
So that's, I think there's another young French rider in that group, Barguil, who I think we haven't really noticed, which is probably we've been talking all the time about Alaphilippe, where Barguil may be the rider who's going to benefit most from today.
Simon Yates is doing well to hold on. That's Danny Moreno, the Movistar domestique, who's done his work effectively and doesn't really need to hold on to this group unless he feels strong enough to do that. There is Warren Barguil, about 6 riders from the back in the black shorts and white jersey. A first little glimpse of him there. And that's Bacogniavi, who gets on the front with Henao and Thomas leading out Chris Froome. Dan Martin's still there, Richie Porter's still there, TJ Van Garderen's there. The white helmet and light blue jersey of Fabio Aru is still there. Contador has Kreuziger there.
This is what we expected. Now Movistar have used up all the domestiques. There's Danny Moreno being dropped, Izagirre's gone. There's Danny Moreno on the back. Izagirre, I think, is already piped, so he did a massive amount of work. And now it's Sky who will just take control, and they're not necessarily interested in bringing this gap down. They're quite happy keeping it stable and keeping that group under control and riding and just safe to keep Chris Froome safe and get to the finish in a controlled manner. So this is working out perfectly for Greg Van Avermaet. I'm sure he got a massive scare seeing that time gap tumble down, but he'll be reinvigorated seeing it stabilising and now getting to the summit. He knows this really could happen today.
Well, the bookmakers will have adjusted their odds over the course of that climb, the Col du Perthus. What looked like a 50-50 shot at the start of that climb now looks much more likely that the day is going to end in victory for Greg Van Avermaet and a yellow jersey for BMC. Romain Sicard is swept up now, one of the men in that original breakaway group who was dropped by that acceleration from Rafa Majka some kilometres further ago. He latches onto that group of favourites now, piling up the road. And Van Avermaet is descending. And it's quite a long descent now, what, 4, 5, 6 kilometres. Very narrow roads, sinuous, quite technical, but rapid.
There's a tiny little false flat in the middle, tiny little kicker, but I don't think they're barely going to notice at the speed they're going. Oh, I say that, it's probably going to hurt an awful lot, but the groups are so small now that I think it's not going to have much of an effect.
So Team Sky are dictating the pace of the chase with that group of favourites, and they seem content to loan out they think it's a loan, to loan out the yellow jersey to BMC in an unexpected form. You might have thought it might have belonged at this point in the race to TJ Van Garderen or Richie Porte, but no, Greg Van Avermaet is the man who's going to win the day. Almost certainly, you have to say, for BMC and for...
He played it perfectly because this was the group he was in originally with Rafa Majka. This was a group of 9 riders that set off early in the stage, and with still almost 80 Ks to go, that was when Greg Van Avermaet, Grivko attacked and dragged it away, and it seemed like a bit of an odd move to do to when you'd much rather keep that group of 9 together for as long as possible. But if that had been the case, they wouldn't have gone as fast, and he'd have stood less chance of making it because they're only 3 minutes. Less than 3 minutes now ahead of that chasing peloton, well, what's left of the peloton.
Well, Van Avermaet can recover a little here. The final climb still to come is a Category 3 climb. There's a long, long false flat, almost a drag to the foot of the official start of the climb. And then it's a moderate gradient, it's not too steep. And then there's a little descent after 2.5 kilometres remaining, and a kick in the final 500 metres up to the finish line. That's what Greg Van Avermaet has to negotiate. Meanwhile, for the group of favourites, 1 kilometre to the summit.
And that's an impressive ride so far by Van Avermaet. He's only lost, I think, a minute in total on this climb. I think he came in at 6:50 at the bottom, but You see Sky is setting a high pace. Obviously, it's a control pace. They just want to prevent anybody attacking. They want to come over the top and put Chris Froome, guide down the descent, control the descent at their speed.
Mika Niemi leads the Sky train up towards the summit of the penultimate climb of the day. They pick up Florian Vachon, the rider from Fortuner Vital Concept, who was in the original breakaway move and is cooked. And he'll do well to hold, well, he won't be able to hold on to this pace being set by the Sky train. They've still got some of their best mountain climbers working hard for Chris Froome, just to deter attacks. Meanwhile, Rafał Majka takes Bartosz Szosarski just over the top of the Col du Perthus. And Greg Van Avermaet ploughs a lone furrow on his own, out front, and riding towards, you'd be fairly confident of, a stage win. Still with 11.5 kilometres to go, though, with an advantage of just under 6 minutes. A rider we haven't seen for a while is Thomas de Gendt. He was dropped by Greg Van Avermaet at the foothills of that climb, the Col du Perthus, and we just haven't seen him for a while. Don't think that Rafał Majka has got across to him or swept him up, so I'm working on the assumption, and it is only an assumption, that at this point Thomas de Gendt has gone over the top of the Col du Perthus in second place, which would mean that he has 10 points in the King of the Mountains competition, and he will be the King of the Mountains at the end of the day, as the main bunch, including all the big favourites, go over the top of the Col du Perthus. Vincenzo Nibali has been dropped from that group. Peter Sagan dropped emphatically some while ago in the yellow jersey. Team Sky, well, they're going to wait for another day for the big GC scrap. It looks like they've got this race exactly where they wanted on the day. Alejandro Valverde might have hoped for more out of today. He had the prospect of a stage win, and with it, the yellow jersey dangled in front of him as a prospect. But Greg Van Avermaet has ripped up all those ambitions and sprung a big surprise on the Tour de France today. You have to take your hat off to the strength with which he's delivered this ride.
And for him as well, this is a very good indicator of what for him is one of the biggest objectives of the year, is the Olympics road race. I think many people would have thought it might have been too difficult for him to hill, and he's proving today that on a one-day race he can climb with the best. I mean, obviously he's off the front and he's not in that group, but he's putting in a ride now which really is it's surprising. It goes to show that he really has been building on targeting his climbing, knowing what the Olympic road race requires. So this would be good for cementing his captain role within that team, leader role within the Belgian team for the Olympic road race.
Have a look at those faces all the way across that line of big favourites. They're the men who are going to be doing battle for ultimate glory and the place on the podium in Paris. Romain Bardet from AG2 La Mondiale, looking very comfortable on the right-hand side of the road. Warren Barguil looking a little bit less comfortable now, moving worryingly close to the back of that group. But, well, over the top they go now, and they will start to descend. Mika Niemi leads them across.
Wilco Kelderman as well has been looking very comfortable the whole time. That's the Lotto Jumbo rider.
Good shout, yeah.
So we've got and Alberto Contador's there, so he's not, so we'd get the impression that he's not so injured. I mean, he's at the back a bit, he's swinging around, but at the same time, it could have equally gone the other way. So this will be good for his morale.
Yeah, this is a really steep and technical section of the descent. He's nearly at the bottom, and you can see the road kicking up in front of him again. There's a really sharp right-hander here, hard on the brakes. Make this turn, well, no problem for Greg Van Avermaet now. He turns left-handed, and the road just drags up for a few kilometres to the foot of the final climb of the day, the Col de Fond de Serre. Big, wide main road here, and there in the distance, you could just catch a glimpse of the ski station that is the finish line of the day at Le Liron.
Yeah, he's basically got 6 kilometres now on that big road. Well, 5 kilometres on that big road before he turns 4.5, turns left, but it continues climbing until 3Ks to go. We're going to drop down a very technical descent again into where the finish area is. But it's going to be probably the longest 5Ks in his life, because it's a big road and it's going to feel incredibly super slow, because as you can see here, I mean, this is it. He's just got to keep going now, get to the 4Ks to go, get to that summit, and he's got, that summit is almost a finish for him, because if he gets there, he can make it with his descending skills, and he'll only have 500 metres of slightly uphill to the finish line, but I think that's what he'll have in his head. He's just got to get to the top of this climb with 3Ks to go.
Time trialling. That's what he's got to do. Greg Van Avermaet, don't worry about what the chase is doing behind, just get every ounce out of his body at this point. And Sky have their troops on the front. They're not bothered. They're happy enough to see Van Avermaet ride out this win. And if anyone wants to do anything about it, now is the time, because the kilometres are running out. 8.1k to go. The group containing Majka, I say group, there are only two of them, Majka and Hujarski. They were when we last saw them, 3 minutes down on Greg Van Avermaet, and surely they can't haul that back in either. So it's looking very good for Van Avermaet. Something almightily unfortunate would have to happen for him to be denied victory today. Won a stage of the Tour de France last year into Rodez, ahead of Peter Sagan, stage 13. But now he's not had to wait so long for his opportunity to strike on the Tour de France.
He's looking good still. He's found his rhythm and he's holding us. There's no clear signs of him losing control yet, which often it was just you would notice, but he seems to have it. He knows what he's got to do, and he's just holding in that rhythm that he's got to maintain. Because it stays at this now for about 2 or 3 kilometers, and it will turn left, and it gets a little bit steeper, and will feel more like a proper climb. But this is just a big road, false flats, and this is going to be tight. So he knows what's going on behind, but at the same time, look at that time gap. It's essentially stabilised now for the last 10 kilometers, and that's an amazing move for him.
Yeah, it's a brilliant ride from Greg Van Avermaet, but he's a brilliant rider. And his time gap simply has not been affected by Mikel Nieve setting the pace for Team Sky. They're just matching the pace of Greg Van Avermaet at the moment, and that's why this group has remained fairly constant. No more riders have dropped off the back. And it does pose the question, why is Nibali not one of these riders here? And you consider Wilco Kelderman from Lotto Jumbo is there, Bauke Mollema, Matthias Frank from IM Cycling, Steve Morabito, Thibaut Pinot. These are riders Vincenzo Nibali should be riding alongside and with.
No, but we've seen it over and over again the last few years. When the riders that win the Giro, they don't seem to be able to recover in time for the Tour de France. And I think it's gone are the days, well, can never say never, that it's possible to do the Giro Tour double. I would not say that Vincenzo Nibali is over. I wouldn't at all be surprised to see him come storming back and rip a mountain stage to pieces. But at the same time, he has won the Giro, and it is a ridiculously hard race, the Giro, and he just probably hasn't recovered in time.
But the minutes that Vincenzo Nibali will be losing today, as we rejoin Thomas de Gendt, a rider we've lost sight of slightly, but he's still in second place on the road. And he's won the King of the Mountains competition today. Can he get himself a second place as well and hold on to that position on the road? He'll be hoping so, and so too will his team. But now going back to Vincenzo Nibali, if he loses a couple of minutes today and puts himself in that same group along with Alberto Contador and Richie Porte, who've lost chunks of time in the first week, what a trio of riders that would be to gang up together and try and attack later on in the race.
Of course, but Vincenzo Nibali will have to be careful because he's got his teammate Fabio Aru, who's in this group, who will be the Astana outright GC leader now, so he'll be at his disposal, so he won't get to do exactly what he wants, although saying that he might do
he
exactly
is Vincenzo
what he
Nibali. He is, after all, Vincenzo Nibali.
Yeah.
Not always renowned as a team player, and also on the move. He's not going to be with Astana next year, so how deep do his loyalties really lie? We will find out in the next 2.5 weeks of racing.
Adam Yates sitting on the back. It's a great ride by Adam Yates. This is up here. We can see there's a lot of the new generation are there. It's the new young riders are all in this group, and the only one missing really is Tom Dumoulin of what we're seeing of the future Grand Tour specialists.
Not too much further, but it's going to hurt Greg Van Avermaet before he'll turn left-handed off the main road and take on the climb of the Col de Font de Serre, Category 3 climb. 1:42, that is how far Thomas de Gendt is back from Greg Van Avermaet, so he dug in on that climb. Could have sat up, could have just called it a day, but he's got the mountain points he needed, and he's still battling on. Might well be swept up on the final climb, though, by Majka, and assuming Bartosz Hujarski is still alongside the pole. We've seen them for a while. Back on the fourth group on the road, effectively, and there are some 20-25 riders in it. Sky on the front, Adam Yates at the back. Here we are, left-handed now, so now he has come off the main road and up he goes again. This is the official start of the climb, but ever since he hit the bottom of that descent, he has been climbing, and his legs will be in bits at this point. 3.3 to go to the top.
And that's it, that 3.3 kilometers, that's almost going to feel like the finish line for him. So he gets to the top of there, and then it's almost done and dusted with the gap he's got. But there's only going to be one little difficulty left, which is about 700 meters up to the finish line. But this really is an exceptional ride, and he's in the best position possible now because with Team Sky sitting there. He knows Team Sky aren't interested in the stage. They're not going to hunt him down. They just want to sit there and keep everybody under control and keep it all steady. So this is, and he'll know that, and we can see that everyone else in that group, all the other teams that would have been chasing the stage, have used up all the domestiques. Movistar have got nobody left. Etihad Quickstep have got nobody left. So it's down to the only team that does have domestiques left is Team Sky, and they're not interested in the stage.
Fabio Aru, good day for him, disposing of Vincenzo Nibali. Better day for Alberto Contador. No more bandages. The indications are that he's getting stronger. Romain Bardet is still there, Jürgen van den Broek. I think Joaquim Rodriguez might well still be there as well.
Yeah, we just caught a glimpse of him as well. Dan Martin's been looking very strong. He's always been sitting up near the front, which is a good indication. Unlike his teammate Alaphilippe there, who's just been hanging on for dear life at the back, but has hung on. So that's he'll be pleased with that. Thibaut Pinot, who's not looking so good, to be honest.
I don't think it's sweat. I think he's just poured a water bottle over himself.
But I think even before that, he was kind of in the same position as Alaphilippe at the back of the group, and here's Barry, who has been looking good. So, and he's probably the surprise, I think, of just how comfortable he is. We talk about all the other guys right up there, but he's sitting there in third place overall in a very comfortable position.
It's a great day for BMC as well. Richie Porte and TJ Van Garderen still in that group of favourites. One other as well. I didn't quite pick out who the other BMC rider was, making up the numbers there, and they've got the prospect of a stage win and a yellow jersey firmly in their grip now. Greg Van Avermaet is riding himself into history for his team and for Belgium. Yet another box ticked and another notch carved in the history of the great cycling nation, and he is one of the greats, Greg Van Avermaet. He will be remembered for years to come. He is a proper champion. This is not his favoured territory at all. He's much more of a man for the flatlands and the cobble classics. Crashed heavily on the Tour of Flanders this year, and that did for his season somewhat, but wow. You look at the time gap, and it's edging out now to almost, well, now 6 minutes and going out. So Chris Froome and his troops are allowing Van Avermaet to get away and stay away. Good day for Nairo Quintana as well and Movistar. We haven't really found out anything about Chris Froome and Nairo Quintana, except that they are both looking extremely unperturbed and extremely strong, and they've ridden the first 5 stages of the Tour incident-free and to perfection. Same can't be said for Alberto Contador. Romain Bardet, with his new haircut, went to the barbers at the Village Depart yesterday. Pierre Rolland, Joaquim Rodriguez, Jürgen van den Broek, Katusha with 2 favourites there. Richie Porte, better day for him. Punctured, of course, and lost time. TJ Van Garderen. And his teammate, Greg Van Avermaet. Won Tirreno Adriatico this year. The springtime stage race, preparation race, in some ways for the Giro d'Italia. In some style, head-to-head with Peter Sagan in the final time trial, and the two of them ultimately in the general classification were separated by a fraction of a second. Great battle that was between Van Avermaet and Sagan.
We can just see how strong Van Avermaet is. He's put almost 2 minutes against that attack on the last climb, and it does go to show what an exceptional ride it is, because otherwise De Gendt would be saying what a great ride he's done. He's left everyone behind and still holding off the group by 4 minutes, and yet Van Avermaet is a full 2 minutes in front of him. So this really is a very special day for him. And the stars have aligned, because I think obviously Movistar should have taken on the chase much earlier. If they wanted to do the stage, they should have never let it go out to 16 minutes, which is what the maximum gap was. And I think that then to chase fully committed like they did, they blew their whole team out, but they did blow the race to pieces as well. But they haven't lost any of the main contenders, so they've just used up a lot of energy for basically nothing. It was a tactical error on their part. And now Team Sky are just profiting off that. They've set steady pace all day. Movistar came up, destroyed the peloton, did all that work, blew their own team out, and then Team Sky are just taken back over again and just setting steady again.
Great credit as well to Thomas De Gendt for digging in here. 2 minutes and 1 second, well, just adjusted down to under 2 minutes. His disadvantage to Greg Van Avermaet. So he's doing what Van Avermaet is doing as well, and just riding his own personal battle against pain, and he's going to be hurting now. Van Avermaet has been out ever since that first 9-man breakaway got away in the early stages after the first Category 4 climb of the day. Whittled it down in a 3-man move, including De Gendt and André Grivko, and then attacked De Gendt on the penultimate climb of the day. He's on the final climb now, Greg Van Avermaet, and he only has 3.7 kilometres to ride out before he takes this win, and 1 kilometre left of climbing, so he's very, very nearly there. 2 minutes back, the next man on the road, and 6 minutes the chase of favourites, which is going nowhere. Van Avermaet within touching distance of history, 3.5k. That's all he has to do. 900 metres now of climbing, and once again he hauls himself out of his saddle, steps on his pedals, and up he goes. The main field now are coming onto the climb. Mikko Niemi continuing to set the pace for Team Sky, and they have it just where they want it.
And this is one of the biggest group of favourites I've ever seen. And it's almost every big name is there. There's only a couple missing. Well, big names we'd expect to be there in the GC battle. The only one missing is Nibali and one of the outsiders, perhaps Tom Dumoulin, who we perhaps hoped to see do so well, especially after his ride at the Volta a España this last year. But at the same time, there's not one other person missing.
Most distances tell you the story. He's got 800 metres on the road, and that is the difference between first and second as things stand. Greg Van Avermaet. That's what Thomas De Gendt needs to bridge across to. It's not going to happen. Van Avermaet will solo his way to victory. And there is a descent when he goes over the top, and it just kicks up in the final 500 metres, which is going to feel like an eternity to Greg Van Avermaet, but equally he will almost certainly be able to enjoy the moments and take the applause of the crowd that have made their way to the finish line here in the ski station of Le Lurion.
Will also do BMC no harm whatsoever in the team classification, because in the team classification Tour de France, it's the times taken of the accumulated time of the first 3 riders from each team on each day. And BMC and Team Sky are the only I think Movistar have 3 riders there, so they're already setting the tone of the 3 strong teams at this race.
This climb just ducks downhill ever so slightly before the official King of the Mountains point, so the climbing's almost done now for Greg Van Avermaet, and all he has to do then is descend. Meanwhile, there's a kilometre still to go for Thomas De Gendt, the second Belgian on the road. In a cycling mad country, they'll be glued to their television screens watching this as Greg Van Avermaet goes over the final climb of the day. He'll take maximum points there as well to propel himself up the King of the Mountains competition, and he will be interested in that in the days to come as well. Greg Van Avermaet, don't rule him out from wearing that jersey, but for now, the very real prospect, almost certainty of the yellow jersey is his primary ambition as the main group of favourites go through 5 kilometres to go, and they are on the final climb of the day. Chris Froome, well, this is a walk in the park for him today. Barely broken sweat. The man who's won the Tour de France twice and wants to do it for a 3rd time has his main rival right on his wheel, Nairo Quintana. Those 2 men unruffled by today's events. Greg Van Avermaet has taken his opportunity in some style, and now he does descend. Sinuous, tight, twisty, turning, quite steep. Ooh, just in danger almost of overcooking that corner, but safely negotiated, and down he goes. Won't be long now before he hits the final 500 metres, which just ramp up towards the finishing line, and victory will be his.
Pretty sure at the beginning of today he didn't think this would be happening. I mean, I think everybody saw what the final was today, and it looked like it was going to be a battle royale between Valverde, Alaphilippe and some of the GC riders, and yet he's pulled out a ride here that went against the script and done it in incredible style. This is a phenomenal ride. We very rarely see something like this. And you see in the last 10Ks, he's barely lost any time whatsoever to Team Sky, who've just been setting a steady pace, but that's only because everyone in that group is now fried after that Movistar chase, where they took almost 5 minutes out in about 20, seemed like half an hour, they took out between 5 and 10 minutes.
Into the barriered section now, really not long to go for Greg Van Avermaet. What a season it's been for him, and this is a major achievement, and this will look good on his palmares in years to come. The yellow jersey of the Tour de France, only a kilometre away now for Greg Van Avermaet. Cyril Gauthier, who was in that original breakaway move, is the next rider to be swept up. Not much remains of the breakaway now. Rafa Majka is still up the road, and so too is Bartosz Jazarski, but Gauthier, the next rider to be swept up. Right-handed now, very tight, 90-degree bend. And then he'll line up and it sweeps left-handed and into the finishing straight. It's flat here, it'll rise up with 500 metres to go. He's very nearly there. Van Avermaet riding himself into history for Belgium and for BMC. What a year he's had. One of his big targets went badly wrong for him. The Tour of Flanders, where he crashed heavily, that disrupted his season. Already, just before that, he'd won Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, a major achievement in its own right, but he wanted Tour of Flanders. That didn't go his own way. Then he came back, won the overall in extraordinary circumstances, really, at Tirreno Adriatico. Returned to action at the Tour of California and came second behind Peter Sagan, his big adversary on one of those stages. But this eclipses pretty much everything else that he has achieved so far. In fact, you could argue this is the biggest moment in his racing career. He won a stage of the Tour de France last year, and it was stage 13, again ahead of his old rival Peter Sagan. But Sagan, on this occasion, who wore the yellow jersey at the start of today, is nowhere to be seen, because Greg Van Avermaet is going to take another stage victory on the Tour de France, but with it, as he punches the air in delight, a major prize. He started the day 18 seconds down in the general classification, and after Mark Cavendish on stage 1 and the success of Peter Sagan on stage 2 in Cherbourg, yet another superstar of the cycling world takes the yellow jersey for the first time. It is Greg Van Avermaet, the next wearer of the Maillot Jaune. For how long? That hardly matters. Victory is his, and so too is the yellow jersey.
That's an incredible ride, and it's odd how sometimes you get these adversaries that keep coming up against each other. We had Anquetil Poulador, we had Indurain Pantani, Lance Armstrong, Jan Ullrich, and they're the Grand Tour riders, but sometimes that's the classics riders, and Peter Sagan and Greg Van Avermaet seem to always be coming head-to-head and just pipping each other. And today, although they didn't pip each other, it was a case of Greg Van Avermaet taking the yellow jersey off Peter Sagan.
A passing of the baton from one great rider, the world champion, to another who's pretty much in the same category. Greg Van Avermaet, a serious talent. And now there's an attack coming out from the peloton. So Romain Bardet has decided to have a bit of fun on this final descent towards the finishing line. That's where they are now, just coming over, in fact, that slight downhill section before it rises again and they go over the final climb of the day. Serge Pauwels is swept up by this little acceleration, so Bardet's decided to try and nick himself a few cheeky seconds, and why not? There was a reaction there from Nairo Quintana and Chris Froome as well. Nowhere to be seen at the moment. Well, there they are. Not too concerned by what Bardet is doing, but Quintana is, and he's hot on his heels. So too is Alejandro Valverde, and I think that's Thibaut Pinot.
And it's interesting Thibaut Pinot was there. It's almost as if he knew Bardet was going to do it. So we've seen him before at the back of the group. But now Alejandro Valverde and Nairo Quintana did not hesitate in the slightest, where Team Sky seemed to be caught out slightly. Alberto Contador's being distanced. Yeah, Contador unable to react to that acceleration in the group now. The group of favourites become the Avi has dropped to the back, so Team Sky are reduced in number at the front. Chris Froome is there. That looks like Chris Froome at the back. There he is. They're just in fourth, so he's coming back on. He's got a teammate who's bringing him up. I'm not sure who that is. Sergio now. Well, so that now we're getting an indication. You can see Alberto Contador is still suffering slightly from those injuries, but he'll be happy if he can just get back onto this group now. He's got this descent, and because I think it's going to be possible, it's so technical that it should all bunch up slightly. Well, take your hat off to Thomas de Gendt. He's ridden brilliantly once again. It's been a while since we've seen a rampaging ride from Thomas de Gendt, but he's delivered just that. He'll take second place on the stage. It could have been first, but he was beaten by a better man from his country, another Belgian. And there's no denying the strength of Greg Van Avermaet, but take your hat off to Thomas de Gendt. He's done it again, and he'll take the Mountains jersey on the day. Great ride from de Gendt. Doesn't punch the air, but he acknowledges the warm applause of the crowd, and a wonderful second place from him. Coates, remnants of that first break as well, who had been with Thomas de Gendt and Greg Van Avermaet, and is finally getting caught. So he was the last on the road from that group. But you can see, I think it's Alejandro Valverde who's pushing hard behind, leading that group through the shade and sun, which is never a good place for him to descend, because it makes it very difficult to see the corners and what's coming up. But I don't think that bothers him in the slightest. He's just going to keep the pressure on now. Yeah, it's been an interesting race. It took a while to unfold in the big group of favourites, but, well, Romain Bardet showed that he believes in himself on this Tour de France, and he's going to seize every opportunity to steal some seconds in the general classification. One rider to miss out a little is Alberto Contador. You can see him
just in front in the yellow jersey there, just trying to get back on terms with that group of favourites, which he's doing as he too enters the barriered section. And Alejandro Valverde leads Nairo Quintana past Andrei Grivko and into the final kilometre.
It's interesting that Roman Kreuziger is still in that group. I'm not sure. I think he's just been allowed carte blanche slightly to do what he wants. That's Alberto Contador's teammate. But he might drop back a bit if he finds out that Alberto Contador is in trouble. Now this is going to be a horrible chase back on now, because this road opens up to a sweeping bend ahead. He should just get back on, but it's going to be a battle.
Doesn't look right, does he, Alberto Contador? He's still in pain after that fall. In an innocuous situation really on stage one, and it's really sunk his Tour de France. At this stage anyway, he's losing too much time too often to this group of favourites to really be a credible challenger for this edition of the race. Fabio Aru, he's dispensed with Vincenzo Nibali, or rather Nibali has dispensed with himself effectively as more riders come over the line, and it's Rafa Majka in third place, and Bartosz Szuzarski, the rider from Bora Argon 18, is going to take a very, very creditable fourth place on the stage. He's beaten by a better man, Rafa Majka. Bits and pieces of achievements really for him. A third place on the stage, it's okay. It's maybe not what he would have wanted at the start of the day though. So a day which almost worked for Rafa Majka. Will look okay when he reflects on it, but it could have been more. Yeah, and maybe that face says it all. Don't really know what today's attack was all about. He wasn't close to taking victory, wasn't even close to second place, but it will be enough to stand on the podium on the stage results. Meanwhile, here come the group of favourites, and well, it's Joaquin Rodriguez who's attacked, and Dan Martin goes with him on this final ramp up, and they sweep past Bartosz Szuzarski, who's going to be denied fourth place. Majka takes third, Rodriguez takes fourth, Dan Martin in fifth, then comes Szuzarski, Alaphilippe and Adam Yates in the top 10. Chris Froome leading home Pierre Rolland, and the rest of the favourites trundle over the line together. Jürgen van den Broek just gapped a little, and Alberto Contador once again losing time. Roman Kreuziger comes across the line. Contador is still on the road, hasn't crossed the line yet. There comes Geraint Thomas. There's Diego Rosa, a domestique for Fabio Aru for Astana. Here comes Contador. Well, that is the damage that's been done once again to this great champion. He's hurting, he's bruised, and he's almost out of contention in the Tour de France on stage 5. Damaging. It looked innocuous for Alberto Contador today, but once again it's hurting.
What's interesting about the stage as well today, you see Rafa Majka coming in for third place, just getting caught in the line, but just holding off on the line. Now that's the group that Greg van Avermaet had been in originally, and if he hadn't attacked, and here we see him here, that's what would have been happened. That's how close they would have come to catching him. So he made a very astute tactical move to leave that group early on and fight Thomas de Gendt and Grivko. Because if he hadn't, it was the normal dynamics of the peloton meant they would have caught him probably literally on the line.
There's the winner. Greg van Avermaet bellowing out his delight into this hot air in the Massif Central. A huge result for him, a wonderful stage win, and the yellow jersey to go with it. That's your dream scenario for a rider like Greg van Avermaet. He has no chance of winning the Tour de France, of course, and he would never expect or presume to be the winner in Paris, but he holds the jersey now, having beaten Thomas de Gendt over the line. Greg van Avermaet, he's your winner.
He's the winner. Peter Sagan has lost his yellow jersey. We haven't even seen him finish yet, although I don't think he'll be too worried about it. Of more concern to Team Tinkoff will be the amount of time that his team leader Alberto Contador lost. We'll take a break. There's the moment Greg van Avermaet knew he'd won the stage. Actually, probably knew it quite a few minutes before that, such was his lead. But that was the moment he was able to celebrate. A great stage win for him. Not so sure it's such a great stage win for his team BMC, or at least the twin leaders TJ Van Garderen and Richie Porte. We'll get on to that, though. Greg van Avermaet wins from Thomas de Gendt. Rafael Majka third. Joaquin Rodriguez attacking off the main group for fourth and getting 3 seconds. Everybody else among the main favourites was at 5:07. He was at 5:04. Dan Martin, Bartosz Szuzarski from the break. Julian Alaphilippe, who'd been hanging off the back, recovered to take 7th. Adam Yates 8th. Chris Froome 9th. TJ Van Garderen 10th. Nairo Quintana and Richie Porte were also in that group, but this man was not. He lost more time today, and it's beginning to look as though him being Alberto Contador, of course, his challenge for the 2016 Tour de France is not going to survive the first week, is not really even going to reach the Pyrenees. Now, here's what Stage 5 has done to the overall standings. Greg Van Avermaet is the new yellow jersey, the third debutant yellow jersey of this year's Tour in a row. Julian Alaphilippe is up to second, still second rather. Alejandro Valverde is third. Joaquim Rodriguez up to fourth. Chris Froome still fifth. Warren Barguil sixth. Nairo Quintana seventh. Fabio Aru eighth. Pierre Rolland ninth. And Dan Martin 10th. And what you can't see there is Alberto Contador is down to 25th at 6:38. Everybody else is well behind the leader, 5:07, but he's now a minute 20 odd behind Chris Froome.
I think it was expected today. And he was already came into this race not at his absolute best. 2 stacks in a row, takes his toll, and it was just that last punch with a few 2 kilometres to go that saw him lose a few more seconds.
And talking about former winners who are no longer in contention, in the middle of that group in Sky Blue, Astana Blue, Vincenzo Nibali. I mean, he'd ridden the Giro. The Astana official line was that he was coming to ride for Fabio Aru. He certainly is now, if he's capable.
Well, it didn't look like a motivated rider to me. I mean, getting blown out on a second category climb with 30k still to go when there's a group of nearly 30 riders at that point, it isn't what we'd expect from him. And it's not looking like somebody who could give an awful lot of service to Aru at the moment either. So not looking good for them.
All right. Now then, stage winner Greg Van Avermaet. Plenty to talk about in terms of the implications for the race overall, but in terms of the result, a great day for him. Let's hear from him.
Many congratulations. What a victory. You had 15 minutes and then you win it and you take the yellow jersey. How does that feel?
It feels great. Yellow jersey, I was never dreaming about this, but yeah, for me it's a big dream that come true. I was happy with the stage win last year. Now another stage win and yellow jersey. I think it's one in a lifetime for me, and I'm gonna enjoy it as much as possible tomorrow.
You went solo at 17k from the finish line because?
Yeah, I felt pretty good. Grifko was not working in the beginning, Micah was not working, so me and Thomas did a really good job. We were the strongest guys from the break, I think. And we made the race hard, we made the gap big, and then we saw the peloton will not come back, and yeah, on this steep climb, I felt pretty good, and yeah, I just went on my own because I was strong enough to hold it to the line.
This yellow jersey, how badly did you want that?
Like I said, for me it's a big surprise that I'm riding tomorrow in yellow. I was hoping for it because I was still close in GC, I was still up there. And then you hope a break can go like a day like today, and yeah, it's everything went perfect, and finally I got this stage win and a nice yellow jersey.
Many congratulations.
Thank you. Now, Chris, do we congratulate Van Avermaet on what was a great solo effort, or do we question BMC's tactics? Your choice.
Well, as we thought, really, we saw all the teams showing us a little bit of their hand at least. I mean, it says that, you know, we were wondering, is it TJ Van Garderen? Will BMC keep confidence in Richie Porte despite time loss? Looks like they've lost confidence in both of them because they're going for stage wins, but not a bad tactic, I think, with having riders of that calibre rather than go all in for a shot at a podium place. They've gone for stages, and his experience really showed today. He knew that it wasn't just about winning the stage. If he wanted the jersey as well, he had to go early, and that's exactly what he did.
Now then, we'll see Greg Van Avermaet on the podium soon. I think the podium ceremonies, though, might be slightly delayed because the old yellow jersey, Peter Sagan, has still yet to finish. And, of course, he's still in the green of the points leader. So they'll probably be waiting a bit for him to come in before they get things underway. We'll get a break out of the way in the meantime. Possibly the face, as far as you can tell, with sunglasses and head bowed, of a man who knows that his chances of winning the Tour de France are gone. Alberto Contador lost 33 seconds to Chris Froome today, as everybody lost time to Greg Van Avermaet, who has taken over in no uncertain terms at the top of the standings. He's got a lead of 5 minutes 11 seconds now over Julian Alaphilippe, with Alejandro Valverde third at 5:13, Joaquim Rodriguez at 5:14, then a whole group of riders at 5:17, including Chris Froome, Warren Barguil, Nairo Quintana, Fabio Aru, Pierre Rolland and Dan Martin. Alberto Contador, though, is down at 25th place at 6:38. A good day for Chris Froome, though. He was calm for him, mostly. A little attack by Romain Bardet and Nairo Quintana at the end, but he managed to cover that and control things pretty well. He's with Daniel now. Let's hear from him.
Chris, Movistar put on a fair amount of pressure there, but you came back fighting in the end.
Yeah, I mean, for us it was just about staying up front. Those descents were pretty tricky, pretty dangerous, and not really losing any major time to other GC guys. Obviously, we knew the breakaway was going to stay away today, and the jersey's gone to Van Avermaet. He did a pretty impressive ride there. Yeah, from our side, we're happy with that. We're happy with that. Happy to stay out of trouble, and one more day down now.
And by virtue of doing all of that work, Movistar did leave themselves outnumbered by you guys at one point. Was there any question of maybe sending some guys down the road then?
Not really. It wasn't really in our interest today. It was more about just keeping out of trouble. The big GC days are still to come. Today was one of those days. Yes, it was selective, but it wasn't necessarily going to be a big showdown between the contenders themselves.
And Contador's lost some time, Nibali's lost a lot of time. Surprised by that?
Surprised by Vincenzo, yeah. I would have expected him to be coming here with his A game. But to be honest, with Alberto, that's quite normal after a big crash that he's had, or a couple of big crashes that he's had. I mean, yeah, no one really wants to see that, ourselves included. I'd rather gain time on the mountains from him, not because he's hurt and injured and suffering.
Cheers, Chris.
Thanks.
A combination of brawn and brains have earned Greg Van Avermaet the right to step out onto the top step of the podium and give a double-fisted salute to the crowd here who are cheering a worthy champion today. It was the biggest win of his prestigious career to date, eclipsing his stage victory last year, because with it comes the yellow jersey. 18 seconds down in the general classification. It was a big ask, getting himself in a 9-man breakaway and being the best of them, the last man standing at the finish line. Greg Van Avermaet outfoxed and outrode them all and takes a famous win in the Auvergne. Well, in this tour of yellow jersey firsts, Mark Cavendish, Peter Sagan and now Greg Van Avermaet. That was the order across the line. Greg Van Avermaet and Thomas de Gendt making it a Belgian 1-2, with Poland in third place for Tinkoff. Rafa Majka almost getting things right, but in the end having to settle for third place. No doubt about the winner though. 2 minutes and 34 seconds his advantage, having attacked de Gendt on the penultimate climb. This was the moment where Greg Van Avermaet knew that he'd done the business and taken the win. David, he is a rider with an astonishing Palmares already, but that caps it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think the stage alone would have just been a lovely addition to the Palmares, but the stage and the yellow jersey and the manner in which he did it, I think, is it's a statement. It goes to show that just what an amazing bike rider he is. And he's been in the shadow of Tom Boonen and many of the big Belgian riders, but he's finally coming out of it.
Limited the opportunities for riders like Greg Van Avermaet to do what he's doing now, so you have to take their chances when they come along. Over breakfast this morning, he would have assessed his chances and thought, well, it's not going to happen, surely not, but it's worth a try, and if you don't ask, you don't get, and Greg Van Avermaet has just got big time. The yellow jersey goes to BMC in an unexpected form. Greg Van Avermaet will wear the leader's jersey on the Tour de France into stage 6, and he has every chance of hanging on to it tomorrow as well. It won't be his to wear in Paris, but he might just have a long stint in yellow. He takes the congratulations of a man who knows all about the yellow jersey, Bernardino. But after Great Britain and Slovakia, it's the turn of Belgium to wear the yellow jersey.
And a couple of minutes ago, the outgoing yellow jersey came in with the laughing group, although none of them was laughing. There's Peter Sagan. He will have another day in this tour, and he's had a good couple of days in yellow, so he will not be too downcast. Now, after our first successful breakaway of this year's tour, tomorrow's is another decent chance, so expect to see plenty of teams trying to make sure they're represented on stage 6. Just 3 small official climbs, but plenty of rolling terrain on the 190 kilometres run down to Montauban that might favour the break. There's not much on offer for the sprinters this side of the rest day on Monday though, so we could be on for a tense chase. Either way, it should be a good stage. They all have been so far. 2 o'clock tomorrow for live coverage of stage 6. 7 o'clock for highlights, and 7 o'clock, of course, for highlights of this stage tonight. Now, Chris, what did you make of Movistar's tactics today? They had a little go at the end there, Quintana and Valverde, but they really worked hard and burnt a lot of matches early in the stage for not a great deal.
Well, it's surprising to see on a stage like this. I mean, there was nothing to set up, no big mountain at the end. Certainly there was some tricky descents and they'd like to be in the front, but they did really go through the team and then left their leader with just one man for support, which was weird. Right at the end with 2Ks to go, the tactics were quite good, but it was only Quintana who spotted it. Valverde, yes, Valverde,
absolutely.
he was in his own world thinking about what can I do, and Quintana had to say, we've got a little gap here, get on the front. So it was good to see him being the boss.
Yeah, and I mean, Valverde says he's here to ride for Quintana, and we hear all this diplomatic talk, but it's a Spanish team, and perhaps they were wasting all that resource in order to put Valverde in the yellow jersey, which would seem a wrong-headed tactic.
Well, I think only they're going to be able to tell us. We've looked at it, we've tried to find rationales to make this a plausible thing to do, and we haven't been able to come up with any, so maybe we'll get some interviews for the highlight show to enlighten us all.
OK, all right. Perhaps they will be making more sense, and as a result, we'll be making more sense about Movistar's tactics when we come back here at 7 o'clock. Either way, a great stage, certainly for Greg Van Avermaet. See you back here at 7.